Just say everybody silence their phones if they have them. Reminder. We'll go into the meeting order. Please stand for the pledge. Remain seated for prayer by Patrick the door. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for Blissfield, this council, everyone here tonight, giving time because they care for the important needs of our village. Praise you for a safe summer and ask again for a good preparation for next events of Yuletide, Veterans Day, and associated events, and all into Thanksgiving. We ask tonight for ongoing success and safety in the school sporting events. Praise you for that and all these, and for diligence in all the studies, for staff, classes, for peace in all our homes in Blissfield. Trust you, Lord, for ongoing protection on all emergency services, bringing healing to patients who are in facilities and care homes. We ask that this fall winter season for financial blessing and provision for everyone in business, farming, and for wealth that will provide for the village, the comfort for those who may be alone or have lost loved ones. And I'd like to see really churches encouraged with new people coming in these next months. And now in a time of silent thoughts and prayers, we just bring our families and loved ones to you. Thank you for your promise that we can trust in you with all our hearts. Don't have to lean onto our own understanding, but in all our ways we can acknowledge you, and you will direct our paths. We pray for that direction and guidance tonight in all the decisions and the business before this council, for direction, for good decisions. We ask you all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Wish you all a productive meeting tonight. Good season coming up.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We are going to start with the zoning board of appeals meeting before our regular council meeting. Alicia will go on and call roll for that.
Mike Gunner,
Present.
Gwen Dusa,
Here.
Bill Gritzmaker,
Here.
Sherry Luce, Ken Nichols, Eric Rogers,
Here.
Timothy Waters,
Under presentations, communications, we do all the information provided by Maddie, Danielle regarding the hearing for tonight. So we're going to have to begin by opening the public hearing regarding the proposed variance. Need a motion for that?
So move.
Second.
Support.
A motion, Ken, second, Bill, to open the public hearing for ZBA 250902. Please call roll.
Eric,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, carries. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address council regarding the proposed variance?
Well, me as the applicant or just the public?
It's just for the public themselves, but if you're representing the applicants, you have more than, you're more than welcome to speak now or during the discussion as well. Anyone further? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing for set variance.
Motion to close public hearing for ZBA 25-09-02.
Second.
Motion Bill, second Tim, to close the public hearing regarding ZBA 25-0902. Please call roll.
Gwen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes, carries. Moving on, we will need to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Any action item on that would be the ZBA.
Motion to approve the agenda for ZBA 25-0902, 27 October. Support.
Motion Bill second area two approves tonight's agenda October 27th, 2025 for CBA 25-0902. Discussion. None, please call roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Bill, Mike,
Yes. Carries. And it's time for public comment. Again, this is going to be only for tonight's action item for the zoning board of appeals. Regular public comment for the next meeting will happen at that time. Public comment for the ZBA.
Good evening, my name is Stefan Bagney. I'm here on behalf of the applicants. Jerry is having a foot surgery. And I've got Brian Doolittle, who also resides in my property, who is here to also answer any questions. I don't want to reprise everything that's in my letter. I thought I handled it fairly comprehensively. I just would point out, just to punctuate, it's really a variance as it relates to the location in a highly technical sense because of the odd shape of the property. If one looks at the property, it's practically speaking in the side yard, it's viewed from the backyards of everybody. The distances are dramatically greater than what's required by the ordinance. And the intent is to put a pole barn in a location where a pad was constructed for outdoor storage of equipment, which is allowed under the ordinance. So I think the impact on the public was beneficial because I think people would rather look at a structure than the outdoor storage of the items. And as to the height issue, again, the distance from the property line makes a 20-foot building that's either 53 or 80 feet farther from the property line seem like it's smaller and less intrusive than a 14-foot building at the 3-foot line would be, which is allowed. So unless there's questions, again, I don't want to take up your time reiterating what we already talked about.
We'll start off, any questions? The representative, or do we just want to start moving through the information?
Thank you very much.
All right, Danielle, so we've obviously got the application in front of us. Everybody's kind of clear on the drawings, the information, correct? And I just did want to throw out for the record, or just for council's knowledge, it looks like the total height of the building is, again, something we were hoping to change in our ordinances. Total height would be 22 feet 8 inches, is that correct? Again, it's measured the midline, which doesn't make any sense to most of us up here. So
I'd have to look at the drawings. But I don't have to be proud of it.
40-foot wide, right? 16-foot walls and 412 pitch.
Yes.
22 feet 8 inches. So if everybody's clear on that, I guess we'll just go ahead and move through the process, correct, Danielle? We got the questions we need to answer regarding.
Yes,
Yeah,
so,
thanks for being here, appreciate you.
just a couple of things before you guys go into this. So under new business, this is really your opportunity to ask any questions that you may have of the applicant. And their representation or of staff, and David's here again, if you guys have questions that, for him. I do want to, how you guys approach this is completely up to you, but it is one application with 2 variance requests. So one of them is for the height, and then the other one is a variance to allow for an accessory structure in the front. So you can go through those items together, or you can do them separately. My recommendation would be to do them separate because it's a little bit easier for us to document and track it that way, especially when we go through your findings, which will be required for both variances. And those are the questions that I'm more than happy to read out loud and you can answer, or Mike, if you want to read them and answer. And you obviously make your motion from there, but otherwise, if you have specific questions, certainly let either the applicant or myself know. And Maddie did, provide, she prepared the package. She was not able to be here because of prior engagement before we received this application, but, I think she's got most everything included in there for you, the ordinances, there's, the information that was provided by the applicant as well.
Anyone have questions? Or to vote? All right, so again, just typical process of going through the variance. Danielle, let's have you ask the questions that way. We kind of decide it was necessary or, yes or no, and so I think that makes most sense. We'll start with that, I suppose.
Are you doing the height or the front variance first?
Doesn't matter, I mean, we do height first, I guess, but
Okay, just
yeah,
you know what we're talking about, and if you're ready for the questions, I can start.
yeah, Ken, do you want it in front of you or is she?
I don't, I'll just listen, I don't know that I'm
So,
finding.
and they're on page, Maddie's separated, they're in the ordinances that she provided, but page 32. Of 36, and then it carries over to page 33. It's probably a little bit easier to follow there because she extrapolated them from the mix of the entire ordinance.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so in regards to the height. Variance, the first question is that the special conditions or circumstances exist. Which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, and which do not apply to or affect other land structures or buildings in the zoning district.
Agree with that?
Yes.
Yes, still? Okay,
That the literal interpretation of the provisions of this ordinance applied under these special circumstances have created or will create practical difficulties in the applicant's use of the land, building, or structures.
yes. Ellen, any concern? Okay, I got a yes on that.
That the special conditions and circumstances did not result from the actions of the applicant.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm gonna be, I guess I would say a no on that, and just planning wise, they could have put the building however they wanted or planned for the future if there were gonna be additions, but. It's something that popped up later on, and I get that you can't plan for everything, but. They set the layout of their land, they set the layout of the barndominium itself, so again.
This is height. So are you talking
You're right.
about height or?
Yeah, no, tight, right, sorry, thank you for taking it.
So is our consensus on 3 a yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That the variance is the minimum variance necessary to alleviate the practical difficulties in the applicant's use of the land, building, or structure.
Yes.
With this.
Ellen, good?
Yeah.
That the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of this ordinance. And will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. Which include but not limited to, and I'm gonna do these one at a time, but A is impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties.
Yeah.
Unreasonably increase the congestion of traffic in the public streets.
Yes.
Increase the danger of fire or endanger the public safety.
Yes.
unreasonably diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area.
No. Then it's gonna, so that the height is going to diminish.
Then
the
it will not
It will not.
unreasonably diminish or impair. If they ask me, is it a negative, then you have to answer it's a positive, it's super fun. So I have yeses for all of those, and I just want to confirm that is the consensus.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry. Jump through the hurdle and wait. Jump through the hurdle.
So do you want to entertain a motion on the height right now, and then we'll do the same thing for the front yard?
That works for me.
That we're
Motion to approve the height, variance request. For ZB was 25-09-02. What else is there?
yes, that works. I'll support.
Motion Bill, second to add two. Recommend approval or approve the variance for the height of CBA 25-09-02. Height of, what's the original height about this, 14 feet to 20.
22.8, so
Well, I would still need some, I guess, to read the original, which is what, 20 feet toward midspan.
Yeah, I'll make sure that's in the motion.
Okay.
I'm mixing up my pages here.
Yeah, I am. Okay. Everybody, we're all kind of on board with it, we all understand what we're talking. All right, discussion. If not, Lisa will call roll.
Tim,
yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Motion carries. And we'll go back through regarding everything on the front, quote, technical front yard placement.
We want any questions first again, correct? Yeah. Okay. So this is for allowing the accessory structure in the front yard. And first one is that special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved and which do not apply to or affect other land structures or buildings in the zoning district. Yes.
Yes.
That the literal interpretation of the provisions of this ordinance applied under these special circumstances have created or will create practical difficulties in the applicant's use of the land, building, or structures.
Yes.
Yes. That the special conditions and circumstances did not result from the actions of the applicant.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Still a lot of effort, but
Why, when you look at this, we didn't create that. That's what he's asking for, to build something like it, right?
No. Wants to build technically right here in the park that you see.
Top of that, but
So what makes it a front yard is, anything in front of the front corner of the house, or of the residence, stuff, that's what makes it technically the differentiate between a front yard and a second yard.
is that in relationship to the street?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean. The access is less. Difficult in this.
It's literally placing them versus the access.
Well, I still think it's a yes.
Three is a yes. Okay, 4, that the variance is the minimum variance necessary to alleviate the practical difficulties in the applicant's use of the land, building, or structure.
Yes.
Yes. That the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of this ordinance and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental, including and not limited to the findings will not impair an adequate supply of light and air to adjacent properties.
Yeah.
The findings that are proposed variance will not unreasonably increase the congestion of traffic in the public streets. That the proposed variance will not increase the danger of fire or endanger the public safety.
Yeah.
That the proposed variance will not unreasonably diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area.
Okay, it works.
Okay, consensus on that one?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I have yeses on those as well.
So entertain motion of council so chooses for the front yard. Quote, front yard placement.
Motion to approve the variance request, allowing a detached accessory building to be erected in the front yard. For ZBU 25-0902 to approve that. So.
Motion Bill second Gwen to approve the variance request for the detached accessory building for the placement in the front yard for CBA 25-09-02. Discussion.
Do we have any other properties in the village that this potentially could be an issue with?
I'm sorry,
Do we have any other properties in the village that potentially this issue could come up again?
with the front yard or are you
This type,
inquiring about both?
mainly the front yard.
Yes. There are other properties that have similar where there's a longer and narrow access for that property and then it kind of sits behind another residential property. It's very similar. I know of two others that
Are these properties that you're speaking of, are they as large as this property is?
no,
They're much smaller.
yes.
I guess kind of piggybacking off that again, this is sort of the oddity, and we're talking about these sort of odd shaped lots that totally makes sense. My concern would be set precedent for the future where, you know, you have a 66 by 180 foot normal lot in town, you know, on these sort of side streets, and somebody's asking for something in the front yard. We don't allow accessory buildings, you know, to be built before the residents. We don't allow them to be in the front yard generally on like a smaller lot. So again, this is sort of the oddity. I just don't want to set us up for something in the future where we're really affecting somebody else's property where it's a smaller lot. Again, trying to be consistent. I guess that's my 2 cents on it. But in this lot, it doesn't make sense. And for storage, I would much rather see things in a barn rather than set out on the edge of the property. That's my 2 cents.
Those are my concerns as well. I mean, this is somewhat of a, I don't want to call it an anomaly, but it is a very large piece of property in the village. Where we don't have larger pieces such as this right now. Not to say we couldn't have if something got annexed in. But I know there's at least 2 other properties that I know of that potentially could be a problem down here.
That are smaller,
They're much smaller.
much smaller. I think the size is those. That sticking point could be the sticking point for the future, not a sticking point in this particular situation.
Because it is such a narrow driveway going back in, it sits back quite a ways. Most people driving by Probably wouldn't notice it until. The trees are out, the leaves are off the trees. It is buffered. That's my only concern.
You guys have the ability, and I'm not telling you what to do, it's your decision, but you have the ability when you go through these findings to elaborate on your yes answer. If you want to be more specific as to why you believe there is a
Recent justification.
correct, that may that's maybe specific to this parcel or property in question.
So perhaps, but we would want to amend the motion to list the size of the lot.
Well, your motion does not, your motion is just to approve, so I right now have your recorded findings as just yes. And you guys, and we just generally do it, and the only time we would do roll call is if you're not agreeing and we don't know, then we would ask for a roll call on the findings. But if you guys wanted to amend your findings, you could do that, and that amended finding would become part of the record. And I'm not telling you that you have to, I'm just listening to your conversation, that might be a way, for you to kind of verbalize and document why this property is unique.
Because it's got me. This council's not here.
Right.
For the future, can appropriately.
And it's certainly something that would be, much as discussed, the setbacks are much larger, again, it's a larger property, and again, we're not talking 3 foot off a property line, we're talking much greater, distance between the neighbor, the two adjoining neighbors' property lines and where the building would sit. So I think that probably justifies quite a bit of it. As well as just, the general shape of the property and the natural buffer that it has.
And you want this under one for the special conditions or circumstances that exist that are peculiar? Is that where you would want to identify that?
Yeah, my advice as well, as a concern that's been voiced by a number of councilpersons. As far as not setting a precedent, making sure that you're not setting yourself up for issues down the road for a similar request. Is particularly has the applicant created the practical difficulty? And I might, brought it up about, not planning, not necessarily knowing exactly what you're gonna do with the whole property. But part of the reason why this is requested is because of the building, the barn dominium that was built, the configuration on the property that it was built, size of the residence that was built. That those are done by the applicant. So what you need to make sure of is that, so that we're not setting ourselves up for other issues with other property owners who also build their own residences on properties in such a way that putting an accessory structure in the back is not practical because of what they did previously. What you need to, my suggestion is to make sure that you put your thoughts and findings on the record as to why you believe this was not an applicant created practical.
So what verbiage would you use, would you recommend them be? I think that's a very fair question.
I do not want to substitute my judgment for this body as far as what they find. But I do think that you do need to at least voice your opinion as to, and it may be because of the peculiarness of the property itself, of why the structures that are there presently do not create some applicant created practical difficulty of why there could not be an accessory structure in the backyard.
I don't know too many other 10-acre parcels inside the village. And,
That's what you're saying.
That could be an aggravating or a mitigating factor. Right. That can work both ways, actually.
Do we know how wet the property gets? Again, it's sort of a wooded area in the back area, and a lot of that is unbuildable. Based on history, is that part of the issue?
Placing it there. Originally, it's not, because as the builder, we had them put in drainage. So it carries any water away and it connects to the county drains. Our original plan was, it was just gonna be a gravel parking pad for access company and stuff like that. When we purchased the 12 acres of farmland attached to our property, then it's like, okay, to maintain it, that kind of changed the idea of now we need the farm equipment. Instead of parking it out. And few of other people's houses, a barn seemed reasonable to store that equipment in. What the original plan wasn't to buy the excess of 12 acres from the farm, but it was just gonna be the parking pad. But with the purchase of it, we figured it would be a good thing to do to store the equipment.
Do me a little favor, Brian, let me step up
Yes.
in the podium there in case people at home want to listen. Can you explain the 12 acres? What's the addition? Is that the behind the apartments or is it west of?
Yes,
property?
it wraps around the apartments, so it is at the end of Joy Street. There's the 4 duplexes so if you're down Joy Street on the west side. It dead ends at 12 acres of farmland right there. Like Maddie said, it was originally zoned for residential, but because it is grandfathered in of a right to farm that property is, so we want to continue to keep the farm and have it farmed also.
So this literally becomes a farm for little farming equipment for that set.
Correct.
And I just, having looked at the property, part of what they've done is they've maintained the trees and whatnot, which is an amenity to the whole community.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I was commenting when I visited that my maple trees that are the height of the ones they just planted, I planted 12 years ago, so that they're pretty committed to maintaining the growth of trees in front, maintaining the buffering trees. And it's a more natural area, what will technically be the rear yard. And so preserving that is important. And then I'd also just add, not that that's where we're going with this, but that since it would be a barn that would accommodate agricultural activities, technically that would be covered by Right to Farm Act anyway. And I think that's a pretty significant factor that if we went through a different route, we got a GAMP certification from the Department of Agriculture, we wouldn't have to be here, but we wanted to come before the community and respect the community.
Well, you hit one of the points I was going to bring up, I guess, again, the sort of the tree line buffer from the property on the south. Dave, can we actually stipulate that they maintain, can we add stipulations to that they maintain that quote natural buffer, or if the property or to the east request that we provide some sort of buffer in between there?
You can place reasonable conditions on the granting of the variance, yes.
And again, I'm glad you brought that up. Sounds like that you're willing to do that or wanting to do that anyway, but that would be my request. Is if, again, we are trying to be good stewards to neighbors, again, if anybody, generally the 2 issue properties I'm talking about are the one to the south and the one just to the east. If they were requesting some sort of land buffer, I don't want to see big concrete wall, but some sort of natural plantings, etc. Work with them to try to help them out. Again, we do have quite a larger setback than a general, distance that would be discussing here, but again, try to be good neighbors. What's the best way to keep everybody happy? That would be a stipulation that I would either request or want to see inserted.
And that was one of the selling points that I commented on, was that there's an intent to maintain the mature trees on the south, on the property line with the homes to the south. And those, having seen it, those are attractive trees, and I'm a bit of a fan of trees myself, so I want to see that.
And we would kind of thought about, especially the houses to the east of us, it is putting up more trees and shrubs along there. But it's been kind of hand in hand. It's like, oh, yes, we'd like to do it, but there's no way to water them right now, so so we've got to figure out a way to get them watered, but that's kind of our goal, would like to do when the ways maintained.
And it's certainly not like a zoning difference, you know, we're going RM1 or whatever to, you know, single residential or whatnot, so we can't really, I guess, demand that. But again, yeah, I don't see that as an unreasonable stipulation or request if we, if you something like that if needed.
Yeah, no, we don't have a problem with that.
The only notes that I have down here is the peculiarness of the property. I don't know how much more in depth we would want to go with that, and then the maintenance of the mature trees. That was something else you're saying you like to have stipulated.
So for your findings, when I had made a note that you guys had mentioned the shape of the lot. That the request exceeds the current setback, so they're not also asking for a reduced setback. For the accessory structure, and that due to the size of the property overall. For your identified. Property owner. If you guys all agree to that, I would include that in the findings under number 1.
And preserving that back wooded area, I think that is, you know, something that helps justify, again, this is already cleared, it's already open. There's a lily pad right there, I think for future reference, that would be something to say, we're trying to preserve, you know, some of the canopy. The tree canopy in town, and that sort of justifies the location as well. for myself.
Also adding that, do we have a general consensus with the findings that to include those items? Yeah, so shape of lot, that they're exceeding the required setbacks, the size of the entire parcel being larger and preserving the back wooded area.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm fine with all of them except the back wooded area. I think as a property owner, if you want to take down trees that's on your property or put trees up, that's you're entitled to do that. I think if we're going to make such a such a varying variance to the variance, why have the variance at all? So it just seems to me that, I mean, I like trees too, but I don't.
Well, if that were the case, they could mow down all those trees and build it in the back of the property, and they wouldn't need a variance, correct?
Maybe they would want to, maybe they're not obligated to do anything. But think about that one for a minute. But that's possible. I mean, they could have just said, we're gonna have a 300-foot driveway and build the house the way that they did. But they've been adding on to all of to their property. And I don't, that's I don't know, this process is frustrating to me. Because we're granting what they're asking for as conditions are currently. And we're putting stipulations on it that they maintain a lot of other conditions permanently.
can I
Am I
clarify?
missing something?
So I think you're intertwining the two. So right now, we're just talking about findings. So we're just saying that these are things that are peculiar to that land that it's the why you answered yes. So we're not putting a condition that they maintain or preserve that backwooded area. You're just saying, as of today, the variance was granted, and these are the unusual circumstances to that property or why we granted it. Now, one of the conditions that Mike had brought up, I think it was Mike, is putting that buffer. That you would have to do that separately, and that needs to be part of the motion. So right now you have a motion on the floor to approve. If you guys want to put a reasonable condition, then you would say within the motion, with the condition that a buffer in the front or that south line be maintained. But I don't think you guys had ever proposed to preserve that back. It's just for the findings. So the findings don't become a requirement or a condition for the applicant.
Okay.
It's just a record as to why you approved or did not approve an application, like what your train of thought was as to why it met those requirements, because when you're looking at a variance, you go through those findings and you should be able to answer them with your reasons, and if you're saying yes to all of those things, then ideally, or typically, you would grant the variance. If you're going through and you're saying no to those, then that would be your grounds for denying a variance.
Kind of like justifying why we said yes to that.
But I
Okay.
do still need a general consensus if you want that included in the
Well, the
findings or not.
consensus doesn't.
So it's still,
Correct.
right, I need a majority. So if we're split on this, then we need to do a roll call. If the majority of you is saying we're good with that being part of the finding, then that's how I would report it.
Well, I'm, like I said, I think I'm fine with everything except for the condition that they maintain a buffer. If they desire to have a buffer, great. If they desire to make changes in the future, great. I don't want them to have to come back and ask for a variance on that. Would that put them in that predicament? If we grant the variance and then what with the expectation that they maintain a buffer,
They would have to request
if they wanted to change.
An amendment
if they
to
wanted
the
change it,
variance.
I don't want to do that.
Well, and I say, but so procedurally, I'm you're kind of back at Danielle here. Right now, you're establishing your findings, you have a motion on the floor. Once you've established your findings, if someone wants to amend the motion to add conditions, then you can discuss
Okay.
the condition. You're not at that point, and you may not get there if you don't have a motion and a second to amend the motion.
Okay.
But right now, you're getting your findings in line. Then if someone wants to make a motion to amend the motion, they can. If someone wants a second, they can. Then you can discuss that, vote on that. Then if that passes, then you vote on the motion as amended. If that motion to amend fails, then you're voting on the original motion just to grant the variance. Does that make sense?
It does.
So if there's number one, that's those special conditions. We want to kind of list these conditions, so that if something comes up in the future, we've got the backbone to go ahead and say, this is why we went ahead.
Well, you're listing them as finding, right, not conditions.
That's what I understand that, but it's getting into where. Like I had said earlier, now it's incumbent upon them if they want to change their yard. And remove the buffer, we're preventing them. From being able to use the property the way that they want, they would have to come back to the council and ask for a variance. On
And
that.
I don't see anything wrong with that because it's a give and take. It's you work with us, we'll work with you. And again, it's the variance request is to help. Not just property owners, but the surrounding properties as well, protect them as well.
I understand, we have,
I think
there's
there's
letters here in the packet. Nobody is opposed to what they're doing. Without us telling them they need to have a buffer. So I think what we need to do, it sounds like, is let's get through the first vote. To approve their, and then we can come back to this and. Yeah, sure.
Again, these variances don't go away. So again, we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting the surrounding properties as well. So
Right.
the same. That's nice.
Yeah, no, it's cool, it's fine.
We good? We're ready?
You have a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay.
To approve the variance request for allowing the accessory structure in the front yard.
All right. Last chance for discussion. Lisa, call roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Carries. Good discussion. Good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for your time and patience.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's the question.
They can do it.
Property.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there a business in there, for the union?
Is it a business?
Is there a business in?
I mean, I suppose you can ask Brian, I'm sure he has to answer anything, but did you want to know if there's is this like a occupied residential business in the barn, quote, barn or mini itself?
Is there a business within the barn minimum is what you're asking? Correct. No, there's not.
Just curious.
Oh, yeah, we got my wife's nursery on one side and I have a wood shop on the other side. Okay.
That was good.
Perfect. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, nothing further on the CPA meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn on that one.
Washington Journal ZBA. Maybe. 1845.
Second. Motion Bill, second Tim to adjourn the ZBA meeting at 18:45, sorry, 6:45. Please call roll.
Eric,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yeah.
Tim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Put it on that one, do we want to move right in? We, yep. Follow meeting in order for the regular council meeting. At 7:45. Please, we'll want to start with the roll call. Yeah.
Mike,
Present.
Gwen,
Yeah.
Bill,
Here.
Sherry. Did I do something wrong?
No, you're good.
Ken,
Here.
Eric,
Here.
Tim,
Road. All right, minutes from October 13th, previous council meeting.
Move to approve the minutes of the October 13, 2025 as presented.
Support.
Motion Eric, second Bill, to approve the minutes of October 13th, 2025 regular meeting as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Gwen,
Yeah.
Tim,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Carried. Being on presentations and communications, we do have some representatives from Anna Smith here to discuss the river raising erosion project. Let's start with that.
Okay.
Any clicker?
I just usually the next thing when you tell me.
Appreciate it. As you know, we were working on phase 2 of the erosion project. So we've kind of gotten to that to a point where we'd like to present our findings. There's some next steps near the end, and it's a slide that's for a cloud and graded hill.
I don't have
an
any-
resource team lead.
I don't have another one
So,
open.
obviously, that's available for other questions that's needed, and then speak up after the presentation if you guys have questions.
We're in the slideshow set up, correct? So
Yeah, he's not. Yep.
Can you all hear out there, something, at least have the speakers on, right? You guys are good in the audience, can you hear? No? Is that not?
It's on.
It is.
It is on. We tested it earlier, but I can turn it up.
Feel like if I get real close.
We do that for us. again.
Okay,
So.
so
We'll try to get that fixed too before we move on.
Yeah. The Golden State Warriors tied, anyone's wondering. Oh, thank you, yeah. I'm just for the finals of it. Liaison.
This is working.
where's the,
Little screen down at the bottom.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I need to share it on here, if you give me a minute here. I got that.
Good to see you, legal representative here, David, appreciate that.
Probably want to do.
Appreciate the invite.
Yep.
There's my-
Yep.
Usually it means promise.
Okay, there.
Alright.
You should be
Can
good.
you back one for me?
No.
You click on there, and then I should be able to control again.
Good.
All right, good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're because. Exactly, yeah.
So, like I said, Brandon Hill, he's the next team lead, so he'll, take us through the presentation.
Thank you all so very much. Appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you all tonight and discuss the river raisin and the conditions and what could potentially be done to help address some of the issues. So if at any time you have questions about what we're talking about, or you want to revisit something, please just let me know. we'll get this party started. Maybe. You click on the screen again for me?
Yeah.
There we go. All right, so. Essentially what we've done up to this point is a stream bank assessment, taking an evaluation of the entirety of the stream within the village itself to make sure that we understand what we're working with. Identifying threatened and endangered species that might be encountered in this area and what we're gonna have to do about those. Identified some feasibility or conceptual stabilization options, and then dug into funding strategy. The way that I always explain it to people is sometimes, especially when it comes to environmental engineering, there's a lot of crazy ideas. What MSG really prides ourselves in is being able to come up with ways for communities to actually make those a reality as well. And that's some of the stuff that we're gonna be discussing here tonight. So first of all, stream bank assessment, kind of what we're talking about here. What we dealt with was called a bank erosion hazard index, and all you need to know is that there's a series of calculations that are done in order to determine how healthy or how dangerous a certain stream bank is. So we're looking at root depth, we're looking at the root density, we're looking at the surface protection overall, and then we're also looking at the angle of the bank, because obviously physics come into play when we're dealing with this sort of thing. Based on the findings that we had, we give them a score, which tells us, is this an extreme concern? Is it very high, high, moderate, low, very low? These are the results. I've got them categorized here in a couple of different ways. Each of the reach names reflects the evaluation, as well as the table off to the side here. So you can see our largest areas of concern from the E-high results are reach 1 and 2, 4 and 6, which with 3, 7, and 8 coming up behind, and then reach 5 being the least at risk. So that's just based on the findings here. That doesn't take into account necessarily what that bank is protecting. So obviously, when we look at the village itself, reach 6, that runs right along the road the entire way, and is undermining or potentially undermining that street. Reach 7, we have the wastewater treatment plant right there. So obviously, those two things are things that we need to take a special interest in making sure that we know how to deal with. When we looked into the threatened and endangered species, and this really only comes into play when we're talking about how do we permit future work, because any work that gets done below ordinary high water, we're going to be dealing with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Eagle requirements. So the no effect would be the monarch butterfly. It can be found in this area, but none of the project solutions are going to potentially impact it. Not likely to affect Indiana bat, the northern long-eared bat, the eastern Masaga rattlesnake, and then the rayed bean is a may effect. That's a mussel. There's potential that based on the footprint of the area that gets worked upon, we might have to take an evaluation of mussel habitat. That is something that MSG has the capabilities of actually doing in-house with our environmental team. And then just some quick pictures showing you current conditions. So our team has gone up and down the river Raisin for these reaches a couple of times and taken into account the conditions that we saw. There's some good, there's some not so good. The existing riprap protection seems to be doing really well. That's a successful implementation. It's not a beautiful one, but it is productive. There's some woody debris that's been naturally collecting, and oftentimes people are in a big rush to clear out woody debris. Honestly, it's one of the best things that you can have in an environment that is heavily silted, because that wood breaks up the water currents drop out sediment, the sediment piles up and rebuilds your stream banks. You've got some trees that are being undermined and potentially, at risk of falling. You've got exposed roots from the erosion occurring. You've also got undercut banks, which is indicative of high erosion, and then you'll see that sediment deposited elsewhere downstream. tonight we're gonna be talking about kind of the spectrum of engineering solutions, and the way that I like to explain this to people is you've got green to gray. Green engineering solutions are gonna be the ones that environmentally, everyone's going to embrace. They're gonna be, much more easy to implement, they're not gonna be as hard to permit. They're also not going to be as robust as the gray solutions. So in areas where you're facing significant trouble, oftentimes a green solution isn't going to be up to the task. So what I've done is I've categorized each of the things that we're going to be discussing today along this spectrum, and you'll see a slider on each slide that shows you kind of where it falls in the spectrum. And we'll also talk about the type of problems that each solution will help you to address.
Do costs usually go hand in hand with the green to gray, or green usually cheaper than,
Green is cheaper. Yeah, yeah.
well, we all know, where we're at.
Yes, and we'll actually get into that. Not only did I include your typical cost per linear foot on each of these solutions. We also broke out once we get into funding mechanism, we broke out the estimated cost for implementing this across that reach. And then I've also got some solutions for how that funding could be generated. And then I threw in kind of a last minute addition, a wild card solution that doesn't technically fall within the scope of what we have been talking about here. But after I got to looking at some of the challenges that you guys are facing, I felt like it was something that the community ought to consider as perhaps a value add solution for you guys. So I nerded out a little bit, so we'll get into that shortly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss each of these methods. So I'll explain what they are, how they work, why they work, and then we'll jump into where they could be implemented. That way we understand what tools we're working with, and then we'll discuss where the tools are getting used. So the pole miner method, stabilization method, is essentially that woody debris idea that I just discussed. You take on-site woody debris that you have, you lay it down, you anchor it to existing live trees or dead man anchors set back into the stream bank itself. And the idea is that the debris isn't what solves your problem. The debris changes the behavior of your stream or your river, and then that naturally begins to behave differently and changes what it is that's going on. Honestly, if you have this method going on and you end up seeing the sticks years down the road, something's gone wrong because it didn't work. The other thing that you have to bear in mind with this is if you have this in an area where the river oftentimes ices over and has significant ice flows, you have to be very careful with the way that it's engineered, or else those ice flows are rough, man. There's a lot of power behind that, and they can rip stuff like this right out of the ground. So it's useful in small doses, it's useful in specific areas, but it's not something that necessarily is just ubiquitous and you can put it up and down the river and it'll solve all your problems. Yeah, Ken, that's something, raise your hand.
Yeah, how would flooding affect this pole miner method?
It's not going to hurt it. If anything, it might just set back some of the accretion that's occurred. But really, if you have flooding that is bringing additional sediment downstream, it could deposit additional material there and actually help build up. It really just depends on what you have going on upstream. If you've got a lot of clean, fast flowing water that's not bringing a whole lot of sediment with it, it's probably just going to wash the thing out. Nature will have to start building back up again. If you've got a flood that's bringing with it a lot of sediment, this is going to act almost like a beaver dam, and it'll start building up sediment behind it and change the way that the stream bank behaves.
Because I'm wondering if a lot of some of your pictures that you had that showed the exposed roots, if that doesn't occur mostly during flood stages for us.
Yeah.
So that's why. And if, I don't know if this is the time to ask the question, would the removal of the dam have an impact on how would that impact the flow of the river, the amount of erosion, that sort of thing that we currently experience? In your photo, the water was barely flowing over it.
Yeah. So to speak with confidence about the impact that removal of the dam would have, you would have to specifically look into the hydrodynamics of the system. In general, I can speak to the fact that it would help to move the waters that are backed up behind it through the system more swiftly. And it is something that I've actually had communications with, between myself and the River Raisin Watershed Council. During our pursuit of funding mechanisms, I called a variety of potential partner organizations throughout the county, throughout the region, and had conversations on behalf of the village to explore what are options that exist, what are things that other people are working on in the region, how can we fold those together? And that's one of the solutions that I'm going to be speaking to later on is the idea that this is not necessarily a solution that the village of Blissfield can solve on its own. This is likely part of a larger regional condition that is being faced. And one of my recommendations for the village would be to find partners in the region, and we've identified some that are very eager. We actually had a wonderful conversation between the River Raisin Watershed Council and Danielle and myself. Wait, longer? Feel like a year, but that's just because I have children. But we had a conversation with them and kind of talked about what was their regional strategies. And are there things that we can fold the village needs into? And I'll be actually sitting down for a meeting tomorrow morning with their executive director and kind of continuing some of that conversation on for his priorities, but also making sure that if there's opportunities to fold in the concerns of this community, that I can do so as well. So all of that to say, coal miner method, we put a bunch of sticks out there and let it change the way that the river behaves. So apologies for going off.
Sorry, can I jump in really quick too?
Please.
So I do want to just clarify, when we have not looked into removal of the dam or gone down that route, and I know we kind of talked about it, but I just want to make sure that you guys understand that I know it's something that has come up in the past, but my understanding is that we do need that for our water source, so we would not recommend or make any changes to the dam without doing some extensive research and making sure that we didn't do something that then would impact our water source. And I know council knows that, so I'm saying it not only for you guys, but just the public in general as well, because I think that sometimes when people hear that, they think we're already acting or moving out in that direction, and that is not the case. And I'm sorry to interrupt, I know that's come up a few times and there's been concern, so
No,
I don't want to be misleading there at all.
I appreciate it. That's a sign of a good administrator, making sure that the voice of the community is represented. So I appreciate you making sure that we made that clear.
Yes,
So thank
thank
you,
you.
Danielle. Yeah.
continue.
Because it seems like we're fighting, because a moment ago you said slowing the water down allows sediment build up. But yet at the same time, you want to get the water through as quickly as possible.
You want to get it, so when you have a dam. The situation is that the water behavior behind that dam is obviously you're adding additional volume of water behind the dam. And then as it builds up and over, it's being released downstream. If you didn't have that dam in place, that volume wouldn't be there upstream to have as big of an impact when you do have that flow through the storm state. Does that make sense?
I'll kind of piggyback down that again. We have a lot of curves and crooks in the river, and generally a straighter path is going to give us the speed, right? So don't we seem like an anomaly where the majority of our issues are in the crooks and in the bends of the river itself?
No, so if you think about the way that a vehicle turns, if you've got a vehicle in four-wheel drive and you're trying to make a tight turn, the wheel on the inside of that arc is moving a lot less distance, meaning it's a lot less speed. So the areas that you have the most erosion are your outside wheel. They're your outside edge of the river. So everywhere that you see high erosion, it's going to be that outside bank where that water is taking that drastic turn. And that is just a natural, the funny thing about rivers is that humans are part of the equation that were added to the variable late in the game. If this river wasn't built around, it would have been meandering all over God's green earth, and it wouldn't have been an issue because people wouldn't have had roads and houses and towns in the way. since we do, that's, you know, it's just a reality that like any natural system, it's gonna wanna behave the way that it wants to. And now it's our job to try and work within those confines to help protect the infrastructure that we have in place. And also facilitate as healthy of an environment as we can for everybody involved. The next, moving the green slider a little bit closer to the middle. Bank regrading and tow protection. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about taking a bank that is either eaten away or starved, as in just a straight cliff face. And you're drawing that back towards the landward portion of the stream bank. So we're flattening that steep wall and creating a bank that would allow for additional plants to be put down, trees to be put back. We oftentimes integrate different solutions into the toes of those banks. So what I've shown here is something called a lunker. And the way that lunkers work is that when you've got either benefit critters, so your crawdads, your crabs, your various things that crawl in the mud, and you've got fish that are looking for shelter. If you put a lunker in the toe of your stream bank, you are essentially creating a little protected nook that those critters can duck into and rest, relax, rejuvenate, and then go back out and play in the water. It provides additional, more complex environment. So you're going to have a more complex ecosystem in the stream itself. You're also going to be able to tie in certain tow protection with those environmental features. So the example at the bottom right of the screen shows that the actual the substrate that is touching the water is stone. That stone is going to be a lot more immovable than the soil above it. That stone is then turned into an ecological value by putting a lunker within it. So we've got a hidey hole for fish and critters to hide in. We've got stone that's going to be a lot more resilient to the water level. And then above that, where anybody else is actually going to be visually engaging with the site, you've got beautiful soil and plants, and it looks as if it's a normal natural stream bank, but it's really this highly technical solution. The other thing you can do are things known as locked logs, where instead of putting in a lunker, you could put in a series of fallen trees or logs with their roots sticking out into the water. The reason that you would do that is because, again, going back to that example of the car tire, if you have something along that outer edge to slow down that water, you're going to slow down that erosion force that is acting upon that stream bank. And those logs are actually wonderful fish habitat. They love to hide behind those things. So it increases your biological diversity. It increases your capacity for a richer environment. The fishing is great around them, and it helps to push back against the erosional forces that you've got in those stream beds. Another option is something that's called a soil encapsulated lift. And this is the idea that you are putting dirt back in. It's softer than stone, but it is additional, it's a larger foot. So in order to do a soil encapsulated lift, you're going to do a stone toe similar to the other solution. However, then you're going to lay down a fabric, like a geofabric material. You're going to fill that up with good soil, not fill dirt, good topsoil. You're going to fold that over with the fabric so that it creates this sandwich. And you're going to shove a bunch of live stakes into that lift. Then you're going to lay down another piece of soil or another piece of fabric, fill it with soil again, fold it back, stack it back a little bit, and slowly but surely you're going to create this slope that is held together in multiple layers by this geofabric. But once it grows in, as you can see on the bottom left, you never know that what you're looking at is an engineered solution. Now, this has some pullbacks. There are certain conditions that have to be engineered around. For instance, if it is placed in an area with excessive amounts of erosional force, that's not always going to be the best solution. Sometimes you really do have to go more towards that gray stone based solution. But when it is something that you can kind of blend together with those. It does give you a really nice soft look while actually putting in something that's much more engineered than invited here. The next option would be bendway weirs and locked logs. Now, the reason that this one is much closer to the gray side of the spectrum than the green is because of the fact that bendway weirs are entirely made out of stone. It's that same principle that I was talking about with the locked log solution, but it is much more robust and it will have a much more significant change on the behavior of the water. There are certain areas in the River Raisin as it flows through Blissfield that you can see that the reason that you have such bad erosion is because the water is a straight shot right into a stream bank. I mean, it is just making its way and it slams into the stream bank and then has to make a 90-degree turn. This could help with that because you're gradually slowing down the water as it's coming up to that 90-degree turn. You are actively turning what is called the fullway, which is a fun little term that's it just means the center of the river, but scientists love to use it because they think that it makes them sound incredibly smart. So you're going to turn the fullway away from the bank that is highly erosive. And what's unique about that solution is, in addition to being structurally very sound, it's also actually something that fish really like as well, because it does create pools behind each of those bendway weirs that can allow for fish to swim around, cool off, chill out. So that's how that one behaves. And then the absolute.
Is that doable with the depth of our river? I mean, that's a lot of stone, that's all, it seems
So
expensive.
yes, so it does get expensive. We would have to discuss, you know, you would have to discuss how do you make the bank something that is feasible to facilitate that? So, you know, you may be talking about some structural soil going into the river before you start laying down your stone to try and save money on material while still making the angles work. But yes, it is doable. It's just something that there's some engineering challenges with each of these that really have to be overcome. The most engineered solution, the grayest solution that we're going to talk about here is called a drill shaft wall. This is the example that we used in our feasibility study. There are a number of different wall solutions. Crib cages would be another alternative. Your press sheet pile wall would be another one. There's a variety of solutions. The problem with this is, and you'll really be able to see this once we get into your reach by reach cost breakdown. This is by far the most expensive solution. Unfortunately, it is the solution that you have to go to in the most erosive areas that are also impacting your greatest infrastructure. So we'll get into exactly how this looks when we start breaking this stuff down. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go reach by reach, and I'm going to explain at each reach what are the solutions that are proposed, what are the approaches. So under reach 1 and 2, you could address this concern with your toe and regrading, your bendway weirs, some encapsulated soil lifts, and then the drill shaft wall solution. And you can see that at the very bottom left of the middle picture there, you can see where the regrading has happened, where the bendway weirs are there to redirect the fullway. And then the area along the road there that is protected by the roadway itself, or by the wall itself. This series of slides that I'm going to get into is just going to break down reach by reach what it is that the solution is. And then the next thing I'll be discussing is how do you approach those from a funding perspective. Reach 2, you've got the application of the pole miter method, you've got some regrading and toe protection, soil lifts, wall, and locked logs along your area where the slope would be regraded as well. Again, this is to try and help protect your infrastructure, and then as it gets away from the area with the greatest infrastructure at risk, you go to a softer methodology for addressing that. The real reason where the wall keeps getting implemented is because there, when you do not have a lot of space, right, when that riverbank is right up against the hard piece of infrastructure, your only and best solution at that point to get something that's going to fit into the space that you have and help to give you the greatest chance of protection is going to be a grayer solution. Just because those are the things that Mother Nature doesn't build walls. So when we don't have something that looks like Mother Nature, a more human approach is what's gonna fit into that space. Reach 3 is a much softer area. So it's a lot further away from critical infrastructure. So what would be proposed here is some grading back, the creation of those protected toads with some habitat creation and the pole miner method. Reach 4, similarly soft based on the environment that it is surrounded by. You've got those regrade and the toe, you've got the encapsulated soil lifts, and then throughout the area, you have the creation of those locked logs. Now that goes there because it would help you slow down the stream. It's a relatively straight area and it helps slow down the stream as it makes this next turn into reach 5.
Pretty ugly for our park, so.
Wouldn't have to be. If you look at the options that we have, you would be able to make that look just as beautiful as the current one. If it were a wall, or if we were recommending, you know, a sheet of riprap or a bunch of dumped concrete or something of that effect, I'd be right there with you in concern. These solutions can look beautiful.
Yeah, the top one, absolutely. I'm talking about, I guess, the bottom, the sort of like dump logs, like against the, you know.
So those are buried. You don't see them. So essentially, I guess, let me go back and explain that a little bit better. You dig a trough in your stream bank. So if I have a stream bank here, I'm gonna dig into it. I'm going to drop the top of the tree in. I'm going to put that tree with a log up underneath it so that only the root structure is sticking barely out of the everyday water. And then I'm gonna bury that log with additional logs buried across it that you're never gonna see. So what it'll look like to the eye is a woody stream bank, like a natural stream bank. But it is going to slowly, it will eventually go away as the water eats it away because it's not treated, well, you know, it's a tree. It'll act as habitat and it will be buried under certain circumstances by the sediment. Reach 5, that's going to be your pole miner method where you're adding in some of that woody debris on the top of the bank, which potentially you may not like the look of that depending on the area that it's being placed in. And that's something that can be addressed through other engineering methodologies. It's just the one that in the areas where you're at least risk, that you've got the ability to use some natural materials, it's a cheaper solution that lets you get the process started sooner. Reach 6. Again, this is one of those spots where I was talking about that you've got an almost 90-degree turn on the river raisin. It comes rip roaring down off of reach 5 and it slams into the road there, and then it takes a 90-degree turn and heads up. That area has got to be protected. So you've got the bendway mirrors again at that corner. You've got some regrading. You've got the wall carrying on most of that protection up the side of the street there. And then you also have some regrading up against the lower left-hand side of that middle picture where you do have a little bit of space there. Reach 7, where we're looking at the water treatment plant. We've got areas that are a little bit softer, just past the turn. But that area that is closest to the plant itself, those are areas that really the greatest solution is going to be one that is more stable, more gray than the green solution. And then reach 8, you have the softer solutions on the right side of the middle picture, and then as that outer wall as that outer bank really begins to pick up speed there, you have some of those harder solutions being implemented to help protect the infrastructure of those homes there behind that bank. So now let's talk about funding strategies. So throughout this process, we talked to many different organizations, and actually we talked to a few earlier this week that didn't necessarily make it onto the list here, but here's just some of them that we talked to. You can see that there's a number of folks, and we also looked into a bunch of different ways of acquiring funding. We looked at things that were sales to environmental organizations. We looked to sales that were on the grayer side. Something that we actually had this, we wrote you guys a funding memo. And I believe that an earlier draft of our funding memo is what was in your packets to review. I sent Danielle an updated draft of that last night, I think.
Saturday.
Was it Saturday?
Yes.
I was working on Saturday. I sent that to her on Saturday. Because I had told her, I said, look, I can get you a draft for the meeting, but I'll be honest, with as fast as the federal government funding priorities are changing, I don't want to give you guys, what I wrote a few months ago was accurate a few months ago. And since then, it's a different world. So I took another stab at putting together something that would help you make a sale of these projects in a way that is viable to be sold today. And by that, what I mean is terms like environmental stream bank protection, they're a lot less fundable today than they were a few months ago. And that's just the swing that you see anytime that we have regulatory changes. It just occurs. So at this point, we're really going to be focusing on not so much the stream bank restoration of the river raisin. We're going to be wanting to focus on the river raisin's threat to village infrastructure. So we had tweaked some of our language to help equip you all for that sort of discussion. We also looked into a few grant opportunities that were driven by that as well. The way that has everybody heard of the snowball method when it comes to paying off your bills? So I took the snowball method when we were looking at Dave Ramsey. I took the snowball method when we were talking about how do we phase this potentially. So this is one methodology, doesn't have to be the one that you go with, but it's a potential solution. So if we look at the lowest cost phases of this project, if we look at the lowest cost reaches, and snowball them into other funding methodologies. So find something that's attainable that you can do at the local level. Maybe use that as leverage or match against a larger funding source that then can be rolled into a bigger piece of the project. That's what this is built around. So phase one, low funding needs, that would be reach 5. Phase 2, in the moderate level, reaches 3 and 4. Phase 3, 1, 2, 6, 7, and 8. Those are all going to be high funding needs because if you recall, those are all the ones that include building a wall. Walls are expensive. And it's going to be a big, beautiful wall. And you get Adrian to pay for it. You told me that was work. So, your strategy here that we put together that we thought through for everybody. One, we need to leverage small grants or easy access funds to make early low cost work on Reach 5 possible. Get something done, show the community, show the funding agencies that the village has buy-in. You're doing what you can with what you've got. That'll help sell the fact that they really do need to get behind you and support the larger issue. Look for ways to do concurrent permitting. It is going to be a permitting challenge to take each of these pieces and move them through the system. But what we recommend doing is set it up so that nobody has to use their imagination. By that, I mean, you want to have a very good idea of what you're doing at each reach. You want to be able to describe it to the regulatory agency or the funding agency that you're speaking with. And you want to be able to make sure that they're confident that you've got a plan of what you're going to do with that money when you have it. And then you take that and you go and you have discussions either through a JPA or through a pre-application meeting. And you sit down and you explain from the permitting perspective, I know what our issue is. We have these solutions. We want to work with the regulatory agencies to move this through as quickly as possible. Have your ducks in a row so that there is no question as to, well, have they thought about this? Have they looked at that? Are they really prepared for what this is going to be? Yes, you are. You know what you're looking at. You know what the solutions are. You just want to help them get on board with that. That will set you up for success. Look for ways to leverage your local match and in-kind contributions. Again, participating early, participating with what you can in ways that are easy to attain. That shows that you're invested. You're not just sitting, waiting around for somebody else to solve this problem for you. You're doing what you can as a community, and you're just looking for a way within the region to address this concern. And then embrace monitoring and adaptive management. The river raisin has been shifting and changing and growing and doing its thing since long before the village of Blissfield was here. And if you can approach it that way, if you can explain to the community and to the regulators and to the funders that you understand that and that you're not just looking to control the river, but you're looking to grow your village with it. That approach is going to get you a lot further with the folks who hold the reins to moving this forward and trimming. So let's talk about the potential costs here. So funding strategy, phase one. Using the Paul-Miter method within Reach 5, we estimate that it's going to be between $30,000 and $60,000. That's going to be your most attainable solution. That's going to be your easiest portion of the project. It's quick, it's low cost, demonstrates that you're on board, builds local confidence. And really, when you see that one of these projects starts working, locally, you're going to get a lot more groundswell of support. You're going to get it within the region. It just gets things going faster. Reaches 3 and 4. We step up from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands. These solutions, these areas are a lot larger than Reach 5. They're right there at the parks. They're also very visible. Again, they're something that the community can get behind and can support. You're talking about $250,000 up to just over $500,000 for those reaches. Again, not necessarily going to go out and break the bank, but they're not a small weekend project either. And we acknowledge that, and we'll get into some of your funding options next. This is where it gets gross, to be frank with you. I used to work in municipal government, and these are the sorts of projects that you kind of have to gear up to have a massive push for. You got to have a big community drive to do these things, because it is going to be expensive, and to figure out how to pay for them is going to take a lot. So I apologize, because even I can't read exactly how many millions are associated with each one from here. But I know that we jumped from 3-ish million to up towards 40 million. Right here, if I'm wrong, Lisa.
Says 12.
What was the most?
13 agreed.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that one. I thought they were in order.
No, you're good. Okay, there you go. Well, I'm glad you guys can. So can somebody who can read that say that?
So Reach 1 ranges from 2.4 to 3.8.
Yeah.
Reach 2 is 1.9 to 3.1. Reach 6 is 8.5 to 13.3. Really 13.4. Reach 7 is 3.9 to 6 million. Reach 8 is 8.3 to 12.6.
Thank you, Danielle.
Yes, so I think you were adding them all up.
I was probably getting anxiety about having to share that with you guys, because like I said, it's not cheap. Anytime you're looking at a big gray engineered wall solution, it hurts. And that's why it is so crucial. You guys have taken the appropriate steps to explore what these options are going to look like. so that now you can be intentional about what your next step is. And that's huge. I mean, I applaud everybody for having made that choice, because it does show you haven't bitten off more than you can chew at this point. You're preparing yourself before you take the lead, but it shows that on behalf of your residents, you are being good financial stewards by looking at the ramp before you go and jump it. So here's my out of the box solution. And frankly, this is something that's outside of the scope of what we were talking about, but it is something that's worth considering. So I gave you probably the craziest version of the drawing, but it could be much less aggressive. But here's the vision I want to sell to you guys. Like I said, the reason that the wall is necessary is because there's no room. There's no room between the river and your infrastructure. So you can't put a natural solution where there's not space to have nature, right? That just doesn't work. So what's the option? Well, you can either put a very gray solution, a very expensive solution like a wall, or the village can explore the option of expanding the footprint of the river away from your infrastructure. And this can mean purchasing 50 to 100 foot of buffer on the inside wall, so towards the wooded area along some of these reaches, and just doing a redirection and expansion, a connection to a floodplain off to that side. That's going to relieve some of the pressure. That's going to get your water erosional forces away from that area, and you're going to redirect it. You're going to give it some space to breathe. The big like swing for the fences crazy idea I want to toss out tonight is if there is a willingness to purchase land at this scale, and there is a willingness to sell that land, and the community can get behind this vision, I want to toss out there to you that this could be more than just a river redirect. It could be a nature center. It could be a hiking trail with beautiful footbridges up and over each of the creeks. It could be a birding area where you've got ecotourism being driven by what was previously simply an erosional problem. Is it a wild swing? Yes. Does it require a lot of coordination? Sure does. Is it something that might be worth considering when the wall option is tens of millions of dollars? Maybe, I don't know. This wasn't one you guys asked for, so if it's ridiculous, just say, the guy didn't know what he was talking about, but I do want to toss it out there. It's just a potential worth considering. So now let's talk about funding strategy. So in our memo that we provided you guys, we created a table, and we highlighted each of the funding sources that we felt were, we highlighted each of the funding sources that we talked to, so that we could show you guys the expansive list of things that we'd already checked for you, so that you didn't have to go back and do this again. If you come across something that sounds really good and it's already on the table and it says not a good fit, you know that we've already talked to the staff of that organization and we've determined that it wouldn't be a good fit for this issue. But there are some really actionable steps that could be taken right now to begin pursuing some of these fundings. So the first thing I want to point out is the funding range that we're dealing with on some of these. The public is Lisa's mic open? Is that live right now?
Yes.
Can I walk over to Lisa so I can speak a little bit more intelligently about these small numbers that I've tossed in? All right, bear with me, public. Thanks, Lisa. I did not change my cardigan though. So as you can see here, we spoke with a number of agencies. The timeline varies. The funding range is what I want to bring to your attention. So we have some of these that are really just wild swings. Non-point source program, that can be a lot of different varieties of project size. However, it is strongly aligned with the issues that you're facing here, because you could tie the erosional issues that are causing the instability of your stream banks to non-point source sedimentary concerns in the region. So there are some creative applications of this that could be coordinated. And so we have spoken with the staff of each of these groups and, put down here that you should coordinate with the staff. We also have a document that we can provide to Danielle that gets into the nitty gritty of who we talked to, what their email was, what their phone number was, what we talked about. So we do have that data saved as well. If you look at the state high water infrastructure grant, that no longer exists currently, but it might be worth monitoring for future announcements. Michigan's invasive species grant program. Now you're asking yourself, what invasive species am I dealing with? Well, when you don't have a healthy stream bank, you're going to have stuff start growing that isn't supposed to be there. That's another way that you could pivot what you're struggling with to help address some of these restorative steps. That goes out. There's an RFP being published in September of this upcoming year. Go for it. That you could take a swing at that. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We got some, unless they change the GLRI area of concern, it doesn't sound like this is going to be a potential opportunity, although it does well align with some of the concerns, and based on maybe what the River Raisin Watershed Council is doing regionally, you could get lumped in with some of the other areas that are within the area of concern. The River Raisin Watershed Council, they are very supportive. They want to be a partner. They want to establish and work with you guys. They don't currently have any funding, but they are a regional partner that I would very much encourage you to collaborate with. Same thing with the conservation district. No direct funding fit. However, it's a relationship worth managing. The next one I want to bring to you gets me really excited because it starts at $750,000 and goes to $40 million. And that's called the US DOT Promoting Resilient Operations for Transformative, Efficient, and Cost-Saving Transportation Programs. So again, because this is impacting transportation infrastructure, you could get a whole lot of the project covered under a US DOT application through the PROTECT program. We've already spoken with some of the US DOT staff and we're encouraged to pursue a 2026 application. So that is something that could be a big swing for you guys to be able to take. The Clean Michigan Initiative is certainly competitive, and the fun one about that is that there were two bills that were introduced in 2024. One died in committee, one is still alive. I don't know the extent of lobbying and supporting bills that the village does, but I would encourage you guys to speak or have folks speak on your behalf about Bill 5934, because it is something that could support your needs out here. The Federal Clean Water Act 319, it's a good fit, anywhere between $25,000 to $2 million per funding cycle per project. There is a January RFP release that we would encourage everybody to prepare for. And then lastly, the Sustain Our Great Lakes program through NIFWIF, $200,000 to $1 million. It's a 1-to-1 match requirement. So again, we're talking about how do we roll your money together in a way that helps facilitate additional growth. There's a January applicant webinar that we would encourage Danielle and any other interested parties to attend. And then there is an April proposal window. So when you see those RFPs or those proposal windows, what we're encouraging you to do, and what I would want to see the village do, is create some materials based on the components of the project that the community supports, and do it in a manner that allows you to be flexible enough that you can kind of shuffle your application deck based on the proposal you're going after. You've got a series of information that's really based on the environmental components of the project, and you pull that out for all your green funding sources. You've got the same material pitched in a gray infrastructure perspective, and you pull that out for your US DOT and other gray infrastructure funding sources. Now I'm gonna return to my mic. Thank you. I'm almost done, so if anybody's getting tired, it's sorry. So what's next? Gather local support. So you all know, having the community behind a big project like this is paramount. A solution like this is not going to come without making sure it's something that everybody in the community wants to see and wants to live with. So I would take these components. I'm sure there will be feedback from tonight's meeting that you guys will get in your inbox or your phones will be blowing up. I would take the opportunity to communicate with the village about what their vision is for the river raisin. What's it look like? What are the banks? What's the access? What's our priority as a community? And make sure that the project that you're moving forward with is something that the local populace is going to get behind. Create consensus on the approaches, integrate into regional efforts. So one of the things that I'm a huge proponent of is regional resiliency planning. What does that mean? Resiliency is a big term for if you get knocked down, your community has the ability to get back up again. It is planning for the future impacts that you're inevitably going to face and being able to take them in stride. Now, you cannot be resilient alone. By its nature, you have to have support. You have to have a community around you to help you be resilient. I encourage you to help support resiliency efforts, master planning efforts in the region. Because the way that this can work, and the example I'll give, when I was in Texas, because I was born and raised in Ohio, don't hate me. I moved down to Texas when I went to graduate school, and I ended up working on coastal resiliency for the state. One of the things that we found that was most helpful to the municipalities that we served was to pull together collective concepts. We would have our goals that we needed to meet as a region. We would say, okay, we're facing a lot of erosion in the wetlands, we're facing a lot of issues out on the beach. We've got a lot of communities whose channels are silting in, whose rivers are meandering all over the place, and it's eating up their roads, something very similar to what you guys are facing. Let's identify that that is a regional concern. Then let's go to each community and let's say, hey, specifically, what are the projects that need to get done to address these sorts of things? Let the community drive the individual projects, and then the region takes all of those and vets them. Has some pre-engineering, pre-delivery, conceptualization, like what we're doing here. And then you package that all up in a region-wide document that allows the regional entity, like the River Raisin Watershed Conservation Council, allows them to take that and say, okay, here's our big plan for the region. Here's what we want to do. Here's what we want to facilitate. But it also allows you to grab those perforated pages where your community's mentioned, take it out, bring it to a funding source and say, hey, we're part of a larger effort here. This is something that's been vetted. This is something the community wants. This is something that is part of addressing these larger goals. It's not just us trying to take care of our people. It's us trying to take care of the region through the way that we can. That speaks volumes to the funders that we just talked about. When they see that you're doing something that has already been vetted, already been embraced by the region, makes a world of difference. We really encourage you guys to plan and participate in the funding opportunities that we discussed, and we even drafted a draft support letter, a little form letter that you could send out to other communities and other folks in the region and say, hey, here's some stuff that we're facing. If you're willing to sign on and support us, and we'll support you, build that collaboration. And we'd love to help facilitate that any way that we can. And then here's our pretty faces. So thank you very much for all of your time. There's our contact information for both Aaron and myself. Now I'm open to any more questions that may exist, or if you want to tell me to shut up, it's also something. But thank you guys.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Questions, comments, you guys? Not to drag it out, but again, this is number one, being transparent. Obviously, we had to invest money. We had to pay for you guys, professionals and consultants come in and tell us how we got to do about this. Ugliness of it is, yes, funding is terrible, and we do need to get the community behind it because nobody wants to pay for this. But number two, if we don't do anything, we're going to be worse down the line. Again, we know how much of our park that this Watchway. We know, you talked about the jeopardy of our streets and our infrastructure and that getting washed out. So again, we have to do something. We can't sit back, and just let it happen. So number one, again, I appreciate, again, you have to spend money to save the money in the long run. And it's gonna be an ugly situation financially to try to figure out how we're gonna do it. But people are always honest about grants, how do we recruit, search out for grants for funding to do these things. And again, this is a great step to be transparent with our public and say, we're gonna do this as efficiently as we possibly can. So you guys will also help us apply for grants and things like that. Because that's part of our deal, our contract, right? So it's a very good first step, and again, get the information out there, how we go about it.
I have a question. You mentioned something of changing the route of the river over here on this spot, what's behind us in front of you, but over here off of North Lane Street. How feasible is that type of process? Or is that super expensive? Is that something that is doable? I mean, I'm just thinking if we could alter the route through that area to avoid that long line along North Lane Street of having to be completely with expensive walls. I'm just thinking of that location. I'm also thinking of the other location on South Lane Street over here. Basically from our water treatment plant to the park.
Right.
Is that a crazy idea to reroute a river?
It's not crazy.
It was his idea.
Thank you, Bill. It's not a crazy idea, especially when you consider the alternative. When you look at a wall that's gonna cost millions of dollars,
So I'm looking at.
it's not an absurd idea. If there is the local will and interest to acquire land, make, even donation through, what we've seen some people do is donate the land, tax write-off, use it as a, in perpetuity environmental, easement. There's a variety of ways that the property acquisition portion can be explored. And then moving the river is it doable? Yes. We see frequently projects that are focused on what is called a floodplain reconnection or a multi-stage river. And the idea is we're going to take a portion of the river that on this side is heavily eroded, on this side is got a lot of natural space. We're gonna reconnect this, or we're gonna lower this side of the bank to give a whole bunch more breathing room to this river so that when it does flood, some of that erosive force, instead of continuing to slam up against my hard infrastructure on the eroding side, is redirected into this other side where it's got more breathing room. It creates environment. It's in terms of like environmental ecological solutions, it's beloved. It's what almost every project that the Nature Conservancy or Ducks Unlimited does, is related to how do I reconnect this river that was channelized into a floodplain. So it's doable. It's just it's not going to be your $60,000 to $50,000 or $50,000 to $60,000 solution, but it probably isn't going to be the $15 million solution either that is associated with putting in a wall. It could be under 5 million, but it also gives you that additional space. And I'm a sucker for being able to say, yes, we fixed our erosion issue over here on the road, and now we've got this wonderful biking path that goes down through the woods, and you can see the water, and we've got, the Blissfield Birding Club that goes out there every Sunday and puts on walk and talks. That sort of thing gets me excited to see the ways that communities can layer on their own flavor into those spaces, which a wall isn't going to get.
Reason I ask that is because later in this meeting, we're gonna talk about our water supply that we use to utilize to provide water to our citizens in the community.
Yeah.
And there's several options that we're looking at. One of them is exploring the opportunity of doing a reservoir type of system. I don't know how feasible that will be, but that could tie into something
That floodplain, so.
in the floodplain.
City of Northville, I believe they just they had an underground quote, stretch of their river, I think it's the Root River, they ripped out, they reopened it and stuff, I know, and that's kind of. Preferably, naturally, what you wanna see is the open river, but I mean, say we. Instead of the easement or breaking up these islands and stuff, again, that's sort of floodplain agricultural area, you can never build there. But is there options to maybe divert some of it partially underground and sort of cut the bends so that we're not having such a rush into those sharp bends and maybe have a straight. Again, culvert system underground system to. Then you have an easement, you ability to just cut through the property. I don't know. Cost effective wise, maintenance wise, how much, that would be worth it, but is that an option? Again, we're sort of straightening it out, but. The bends are what are causing our issues.
So is it an option? Potentially. One of the things that you'll immediately run into though is. The permitting side, they're gonna ask, okay, so you're gonna divert a bunch of this water. And you're gonna take it in an underground culvert, run it down across this property and shoot it out the other side. They're gonna wanna say, okay, that lowers the water level throughout the river itself. You're gonna destroy all this natural habitat, so you're gonna have to mitigate that river habitat. And mitigation, the way that I always help people understand it is an economic disincentive to do anything that would hurt nature. So you're going to run into these economic disincentives that are layered on to protect the river itself. And it could, I mean, I'd be happy to do, like, what we're talking about now is an alternatives analysis. Where we're diving really deep into, these are the solutions that folks want to see. Let's look very closely at what the costs are gonna be, what the types of permits are gonna be. Let's explore exactly how this is going to impact our community and see what it is that we can do from a much deeper engineering level. And that can be done, but without doing that, you're not gonna be able to really answer the question that you've asked of, is it something that we can do? And so we dive into a real feasibility, or not feasibility, and so we dive into a real alternatives analysis to look at what you've proposed, drawing the distinction of this is the best way forward. That's gonna be tougher.
Good start, you guys, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for all your time tonight.
I would add to that too, what Ryan's saying is that I believe we probably do have some room in our budget if we wanted to identify a couple and do kind of like a little memo amendment of. A modeling look at like what he's proposing, like to verify the modeling, because we have all the existing set up. We didn't do any proposals, we're waiting for what solutions, so we didn't want to burn through our proposed modeling budget, but we could take a small portion of that. Say, yeah, that would actually, his idea would actually work, and then we can kind of throw a rough estimate at it. If we did think it was, like you said, it was kind of a big swing, so
Yeah.
he didn't know if you guys would, yeah, okay, or if you wanted, so if you did want something amended, I think we have room in our existing. Proposal to do that added value for you guys. So.
And Reach 5 is a good start, obviously, people wouldn't really see the benefit, we'd have to blow that, because you got the railroad bridge, which sits in the curve in the river, just the natural landscape, it's hard to see that.
Right.
But again, thinking, hey, can we get DOT for, grants?
Yeah.
Number one, it's not just our infrastructure, but it's the Fed, it's 223, the federal infrastructure, can we really sort of tweak the grant application to say,
Yeah.
it's gonna all benefit itself in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, you could even kind of tie this all back into like a capital improvement type plan where you lay out 20 years worth of these improvements and what you want to implement, and I say, how you want funding, stuff like that too, so. We could probably,
Necessary evil for you guys, but
yeah, we could probably adjust the deliverable. You will get a copy of or did you give them a copy of the PDF of the presentation?
No, because I wanted to make sure it was final before I shared
All right.
that.
Thanks, Danielle. Sorry.
Get that, get that. Get that, Dan.
Brayden, I have a quick question if I may. So when we have residents that have a concern about some of the log jams that are in the river.
Yeah.
Okay, based on your presentation this evening. Should we be taking those log jams out? Should we not be taking those log jams out? Does it depend on the particular area where the log jam is located? I mean, look, I know there's a lot of variables in there, but what's your stance on that? Or is that the right word to use? Stance?
Like any good scientist or lawyer, the answer is it depends.
My favorite answer.
Yes.
Well, our log jams they're sitting in the middle, which is diverting it to the banks and it's eroding the bank.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, but what is the best option?
Right, but not all the log jams are, some of the log jams are coming from the bank. And they're shooting out, and so when you just stated that about. I can't remember which one of your solutions.
Yeah.
Basically states that, that's why I was curious.
Yeah, so from the perspectives. Again, it depends on what your perspective is. I like to think that I've got a decent understanding of the different ways that you can think about a waterway because I'm a third generation farming family. So my father and I look at a waterway in a field in very different ways. My dad looks at a waterway and says, all of this brush that's piled up, that's growing out of everything, I can't see through the tree line, I don't know if, how the other field's doing, I've got this log jam over here, I'm gonna come through with my backhoe and my bulldozer, I'm gonna clean everything up and it's gonna look beautiful and I'm gonna be able to see through the field. I look at that stuff from an environmental standpoint and I think, shoot, there was a lot of biological diversity and productivity that just got wiped away in exchange for visibility. It depends on what you're going for. From what you just described, it sounds like you've got some log jams that are potentially beneficial. And it sounds like you've got some that may not be optimal for what it is you're looking to do. And the cool thing about some of these solutions that are being proposed is that material can be reused. So we're not going to be like bringing in somebody else's community's trees to put in your river. Those log jams can actually be used for the engineering that we're talking about here today. We can be very intentional about using materials from the community in ways that are engineered to optimize the functionality of the river and the protection to your stream banks. So yes, what you've got currently today is apparently what Mother Nature would like to see happen. It's where she stuck stuff. Does it have to be where it's stuck forever? No. Can we help figure out what would help optimize the functionality of the river, the biological productivity of the river, the protection of the stream banks, the utilization of the waterway for the people? Yes, we can. That's what we specialize in. And being able to do those sort of deep dive solutions for the river is something that would be a great next step for once this funding is acquired. And like Mike said, and I do want to really drive this home. Like I said at the beginning of this conversation, we come up with some kind of crazy ideas, and I acknowledge that. Like as somebody who sits at home and watches my village meetings, sometimes I hear things discussed. Like how are we going to pay for that? My word! In what world? With what money? I feel that. I know. Each of these projects, to me, I sit at home and I think about like if this was me having to pay for this, how would I approach it? And that's why we've done it as deep dive as we did, is because there are ways that it can be pitched. There are ways that we can help you with our standing relationships with these organizations and our success rate in applying for this sort of funding. That these are things that we're confident in our ability to assist you guys with in the next steps. Because that is, we've got folks who specialize in writing of grants and relationships with these regulatory agencies and moving this sort of project forward.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Appreciate it. All right, with that, we'll move on to the agenda for tonight's meeting. Yes.
I'll move council to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion Tim, second Eric, to approve the agenda for October 27, 2025 as presented. Discussion. If not, Lisa, call roll.
Bill,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Carries. Moving on, public comment. Anybody from the public that wants to address council regarding anything, agenda or not? Please do. Yeah, go ahead and approach the podium to state your name for the record.
It's time?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Sally Jo Berry, and I'm a little over 5 minutes. I know you're tired and it's been running long, but would you please?
We were trying to do that. Go ahead,
Okay.
yep.
Sally Joe. Sally Joe's all together, SALLY, capital J little O. Berry, BERRY.
Thank you.
I grew up a farmer's daughter in, don't hold it against me, Middle Ohio. Then I married a wonderful man here in Ragged Township 35 years ago. In those 35 years, I've used Blissfield State Bank where they treat you and I like family. This was my first introduction with Blissfield, Michigan. Now here's my one that kind of runs over, but I see people and I tell them this, but I don't always get to tell them all. Here in an open forum, I'd like to say this now. I moved to the village of Blissfield approximately 3 years ago. Here we have the police force that go out on calls and make traffic stops. In today's society, they do not know what might be facing them. We have a fire department that go on calls and rush into unknown dangerous situations. We have the emergency squad that they are there when someone is in a situation that needs their knowledge and care. So I say thank you for your service to all the police officers, firefighters, and emergency services. Thank you and God bless and keep them safe. Also, God bless our farmers. Thank you for letting me say that. Okay, now, since I've become a senior citizen, I've been going to the Bliss Leeward Center at times. People there are so nice, caring, and if help is needed, it is there. There's the downtown shopping that has evolved through the years, restaurants, some have come, some have gone. A grocery store that when they left really changed our community and not for the good, but now we are so anxiously looking forward to our new country market. This community is held together by your people. And businesses that are able to keep their doors open. I'm a senior citizen and I go to Florida for our cold winters. My very dense bones cannot take the cold. I have to get Prolia injections twice a year to help increase my bone density. Even as the temperatures now are cooling, my body is starting to hurt. I thought it was just a joke when I was younger that senior citizens were saying they go to Florida for it, but it is not a joke. I came into your office last week, like I do every year, to fill out my paperwork for the removal of the water head for 2025 and to pay the fee for the inspector to check and reinstall for 2026 to get my inspector's approval sticker. I'm sorry. I was informed I cannot do this anymore because the new meters cannot be removed. That's okay, it's no problem because my water main is turned off before I go anywhere in case a leak happens and I'm not home. The handle is right inside my back door at the circuit breaker box, so you know I'm not using the entire time I'm gone. Then I was informed I was going to have to pay the $100 minimum every month, even though I'm not using the water, so your budget doesn't change. This way you are guaranteed to have however much money that you have coming in, so you can count on that amount of money in your budget. So it's always there. Being as I'm a senior citizen that has a limited income myself, all by myself, I'm widowed. My budget has not ever had to add this while in Florida, and I really need my budget not to change. My budget doesn't include paying $100 a month for water and sewer here in Michigan that I'm not using. And in turn having to pay for the water sewer that I am actually using in Florida. I asked them when this was changed and I was told you voted on last council meeting. I asked how was I to know? I was told the newspaper. I don't get the newspaper. I was told your website, I don't know anything about your website, because I'm just a normal person, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about all this. And then YouTube. And Brandon told me he would send me that, but we didn't have the right email for me. So I don't know anything about all this. So after last week, I finally found the website and saw interesting things there. Not only your meeting notes, but how much is coming in and how much is spent. I saw about the upcoming events needing liquor license for November 8th and 9th. I believe it says these events bring in thousands of dollars for each event, and I believe it because I've been to one of them. That's a lot of people in that tent. And I always find a heater and I sit down on the floor by the heater. I'm kidding. And it will bring in the customers from other communities. Our local businesses are also getting a large influx of visitors from the sales of these events. You want us, the people in the community of Blissfield, to show our pride. I do. I know when I'm asked where I live, I say Blissfield, Michigan. But then you have suddenly done this to me. I'm just one senior citizen in this community that is not happy. I would have hoped I would have hoped that your thoughts would have been with me as a person in your community, not as a dollar sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Others who care to address council? Mr. Pavel.
I had some concerns about the construction that they're doing on Kingsbury, the raising and the elevation, and I dropped off some documents for Danielle to look over. Pertinent local, state, and federal case law for all that, and what it boils down to is you're not allowed to change the elevation in one property to be higher than an elevation in another property in such a way that it would change the volume and velocity of water flow. Water has always stood in that area where they're doing construction. It's always been the lowest ground around, and as soon as they build the houses and they change the elevation, that's naturally gonna change the volume and velocity. One of those affected properties is mine. Construction hasn't finished yet. I would like to see some flood management designs put in place, whether that's some French drains or little berms set up to redirect the water back out to the street. Recently, they just put in a new sump that is gonna pump water from underground right out to my property. That just installed. It was since you guys all went out there. Again, that's another concern. They've pushed more dirt, right up to the edge of my property, so it's gonna flow straight off the houses right down into my property. It's another concern. And they haven't finished building all the houses back there yet, so, and they're just. I think the last house that they're gonna build is gonna be the lowest of all of the property there, and that's gonna. Present some pretty serious challenges if there isn't a plan in place to deal with all the extra water. That's all I got.
Thanks, sir.
Not to interrupt, but Mike, you went out to Matt's house and.
Yep.
And,
Okay, now was there, Todd?
that's right, okay, you did, okay, I remember seeing the message, okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Any unfinished business? No, all right, we're gonna move on to new business number 1. Water treatment plant master planning. Much like we've discussed previously. Again, taking a step back, start from scratch, saying what is the most economic, most feasible way to provide water to a resident. So it's not that we aren't, we don't have that on our radar. We're certainly looking at, again, the most cost effective way to do this. We'll work with Matt Smith to do such. And we have a quote in front of us, to continue with that. Got Aaron here, got Danielle, Aaron, I'll go and turn it over to you, sir.
Yep, so what we have is a proposal to look at a regional analysis, identifying some neighboring communities that may or may not be able to help the situation here in Blissfield. Included in that are looking at some neighboring communities that we had listed there. And then just an evaluation of technical feasibility of transmission and integration into the existing infrastructure. So we'll look at all the water mains, identify a path to get connection to each alternative, roughly that'll cost based on some conceptual estimating. And we'll look at, we added what Eric had mentioned, the looking at reservoir, if that's also something that could be to help that. If that would be something that's feasible. And then just looking at any other potential kind of permitting issues that may or may not arise based on the connections. And that's probably more along the lines of like reservoir systems. And one thing to note, we did add the option for looking at a preliminary hydrogeologic assessment for a well. To see if that's something that is possible. We broke that into 2 optional tasks. One is kind of like, I like to call it like a desktop review and kind of seeing if it even looks like it's a possibility in the area, because to really go into a test well and all that, you can see adds up. We added kind of like something to expect if that is something. So this is more of just yes, that would be feasible. This is where it would be. And now the next section would be that additional optional 2 tasks to bring it to actual fruition to do a well. So we kind of broke that out, but we didn't want to lose sight of how much the actual cost of doing well would be. So that'd be another $100,000 after that. Just, you know, the preliminary task of is a well actually feasible in the area based on, you know, historical data and some, I believe we had kind of suitability of it in the area. We included it still. So you don't have to necessarily include that in this. But we were asked to provide that cost, so we did that.
We're looking at 38,250 if we do include the well option, 27,750 if we don't. Personally, I think we have done the research and, you know, long before us, but I think we do have enough data from previous administration, things like that, that we pretty much crossed out the potential for wells. Just the amount of the type of water and the quantity of water that it doesn't seem feasible to us. Again, I think we've got the data to be able to prove that. I certainly want to look at all options, but I think that that's one that we've already really taken a look at. And again, historically, and it's just not feasible for us.
Before we move off with the I think it's a fair question. In your history, has there ever been a great change of water tables? That like he said, from 1986, so 86 to 25 here. Has there ever been a great change of water table that wells would be feasible?
I would say that in general, a lot of it has to do with the quality of the water. That can change, but usually it's not really. So I mean, there might be a quantity, but the quality of it's still not good.
Okay.
The gentleman that would be doing it from our firm tried to keep that in mind, what you said, Mike, and he tried to keep the cost as minimal as possible because he preliminarily looked at it and said it's probably not going to be something, but if we're looking for a reason, this is the bare minimum, and then we kind of front loaded the task 2 stuff just in case. You know. So I wouldn't expect him to come back with, yeah, you got a well. Like, nice. There are some around here, so he was like, oh, maybe, but he didn't have a good feeling about it, I'd say, but we would still obviously not carry that into the analysis. We would want to do an updated.
Well, fair enough, because anecdotally for us in this area, we know Palmyra doesn't have water, Ogden Township doesn't have water.
Right.
Doesn't have water.
Right.
So,
right.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mike, can I?
Yes,
jump in
please
too?
do.
So I know I've already said this, I just want to share it again, that when we're looking at these things, staff is not saying that we need to make a change, and we're not saying that what we're doing is wrong. What we're saying is that we know that our bills are high, and what I think that we want to do is know that what we're doing makes the most sense, or if there's a change to be made, that we know we have some more information and data to back that up, rather than just saying, oh, we think this is how it is. And so I think this is the next step for us to really kind of do a little bit deeper dive and get some more data to back up what we're doing now, or if there's a change. And that's not gonna be the end of it, because and I kind of touched on this very briefly in the agenda item, but there's pros and cons to switching as well. So I want to make sure that if you guys approve this, that potentially we find out what we're doing, there's no changes. Or potentially we find out this might be an option, but are we willing to deal with these cons? Do the pros outweigh them, things like that. So I just want to make sure going into this, if you approve this funding, this is kind of the beginning. It's not going to stop here. This is just going to lay the groundwork so that we have that information to decide what is the best way to move forward, and not just be kind of guessing or, because that's really what we would be doing without this step.
There are new technologies for well, so maybe it's a treatment process, but it's more expensive, so. If you did find a source when it's contaminated, it might still work. I mean, I'm not the well, guru, but the guy that I would have you just kind of mentioned, well, yeah, but it's probably, hit or miss. So it might be good to have it, but also at the same time, I don't think if you didn't include that still, so.
And staff, or I am recommending that we proceed without the wells, just based on the information that we do have already. And I don't want to spend money just to spend it, but I do want to make sure that what we're doing makes sense. Like I said, that we have good information and data that's relevant. So we know when we're planning and moving forward and looking at our expenses and costs associated with serving water.
Well, I think you said it very well, Danielle, in the paperwork that we have here. Given our current costs, staff feels we owe it to our residents to ensure the course we are on makes the most sense, or if other alternatives would be more cost effective. And that's what everything summarizes right into that statement. And none of this has ever been looked at before in this kind of a manner. It's been guessed, well, it would be this, or it might be this, or this would be crazy to do, or this would be X amount of money to do. Now we'll get the answers and we'll actually see the feasibility of it. And that's the first step that we owe that to the residents. This is something that we are working on, and you may not be aware of that, because you haven't had the opportunity to hear maybe about the meetings or in the paper, but this is something that we take very seriously. The water bills, we pay those same bills. I mean, we understand it is very much on our radar, hence the reason that I'm hoping that we're going to be going forth with this avenue to make sure that we're doing right by all of our residents because of our costs.
Yeah, we're spending, some again to do our due diligence. That's our responsibility to sit up here and make sure, we're looking at other ways to do, provide water most economically, most feasibly, most efficiently. So I think, again, having the professionals get us black and white, what can we show our residents? This, these are options, or these aren't options, or how we go about this most efficiently. Yeah. So I think that's a good way to start. Like I keep saying, start from scratch, and how we try to appease our residents, but do this cost effectively. So, yeah.
With that discussion, I'd like to move to approve the proposal for Management Group to conduct a water supply feasibility study to evaluate regional partnership options in the amount of $27,750 and authorize the village administrator to execute the agreement.
I support that.
A motion, Gwen, and the second bill to approve the proposal from Manning Smith Group to conduct a water supply feasibility study to evaluation regional partnership options in the amount of $27,750 and authorize the village administrator to execute the agreement. Further discussion. Good first step, Lisa, call roll.
Ken,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate everything, Max. Done for so far. Thank you. Moving on, we had discussion regarding the rotary shelter roof. We've discussed setting aside funds to complete rebuild, or we do have a quote to do repairs. Danielle, turn it over to you.
So I did include both proposals. This project has been challenging. I have been working on it for about a year now, trying to get contractors to come in and look at this. Reached out to Insulspan several times. And the way that timber structure is built and those panels are out there, a lot of contractors don't have the ability to span the distance between the timber frame trusses, thank you. So a lot of them have come and looked at it, and we've tried to be creative, different ways that we can replace this or repair it, and it's been challenging, and most all of them have walked away and said this is not something we have the ability to do. So I have two very different proposals in front of you. One is obviously the most expensive, $150,000, that would be to replace everything. The other one is from a local contractor, Tony Freer, who would actually do some repairs. So he would cut back where where it's been kind of, the water's wrapping around and rotting the edges. He would cut that back, he'd straighten it, and then do new fascia and drip edge to prevent that in the future, as well as repaint underneath, so everything matched. And that proposal came in at the $51,905. I've looked at this with Brent, Tony, and I've talked about it. I talked to another roofing contractor who said that would work as well. I think that's our most economical, best way to fix this, to prevent it from getting worse, and to stop it in the future, and fits within our budget better than the $150,000. I do want to share with you guys as well that the Blissfield Rotary, which we are very thankful for, has agreed to contribute $25,950 towards this project if we award to Tony Freer, or move forward regardless. Which, if we go with that option, is about 50% of the cost. And Blissfield Rotary donated that and paid for the funding of that structure initially, and have in the last several years really taken a look at the maintenance costs and try to be good partners with the village, so that the maintenance cost isn't falling solely on the village and its residents. So that is a substantial contribution as well. But if you have questions, please let me know.
I move to approve the proposal from Freer Construction in the amount of $51,905 for the repair of the Rotary Pavilion roof repairs in the amount of
You don't have
$51,000.
to say it a second time, typo, sorry.
I was going by.
That was my fault, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Support.
That right.
Have a motion, Gwen, second Ken, to approve the proposal from Freer Construction, the amount of $51,905 for the repair of the Rotary Pavilion roof. Discussion.
Don't we have about $120,000 set aside in our budget for?
Yes, I'm sorry, I did put that on the agenda itself, but didn't really talk about it. Yes, we did budget in the current fiscal year $120,000, because we were anticipating having to fully replace it, and at that point, I didn't have a cost to repair. So that wasn't on the table. So obviously, with Rotary's contribution to this project, it's well under budget.
Which could potentially help with future or other kind of
Yeah,
back
I'll
burner
put the very
projects
next
in case
agenda.
it
Yeah.
needs it.
I'm just concerned with putting a Band-Aid on something that's gonna come back in 10 years and have another issue. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I obviously am not going to sit here and promise or guarantee something, because I don't know. But we did extensively look at it, and like I said, I spoke to a completely different contractor that said they can't do this work, that does roofs. Brent and I looked at it. I do think that this is a solution that will fix it and give us a lot more use to that roof. Eventually, we are going to have to do something. I mean, eventually, if we don't fix the erosion, we're not gonna have a shelter, so it's a whole nother story. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that roof is gonna last 40 more years, but I do think that with the repairs, we could get another 20 years. Which I mean is pretty substantial and obviously, like I said, there's some other challenges we gotta face in that area too.
That was my fear as well, and again, you know, us being on those panels, it's not meant to be exterior. But again, it mainly is the overhangs and the edges, so I think a lot of that is just, you know, it's not getting underneath, but it's the water. You know, running off the roof and back around and literally rotting out the edges. You know, the inside, we don't have any issue. I agree, I certainly don't want to band-aid it, but I think this is gonna help fix it.
I would like to see a different style of metal roof on there rather than what's on there currently. Because the way some of those are set in there with the fascia, because for lack of a better term, coming down the roof, the rake. The way the water comes down those channels, because that's essentially what it does, it wraps right underneath.
Yeah, so right now the roof sits underneath those and then the water runs in the channels. And then I believe, wraps around and is rotting below. So when Tony does that, he's actually gonna lift that up and all of that will go underneath. And then it'll have that new fascia, new drip edge, so that when it's coming off the roof, it's not getting underneath your rake edge and wrapping around, it's actually going off of the roof itself. And I think that was maybe a design flaw when that was initially built or constructed to have that edge overlapping the metal roof. Because it's not really diverting the water away from, it is weird how that was constructed, I'm not sure. Obviously that, I wasn't here for that, and it probably wasn't even thought about when it was initially constructed. The other thing to keep in mind too, it was built in 2000, so we're 25 years into this structure too.
And it's more on the side, the gable ends, I guess the lowest slope there at the, so I think if we have proper trip edge and whatnot, this should help the issue. Okay, anything further? Lisa, call roll.
Tim,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Carries. Moving on, foundation repair to this building. Got 2 quotes, inside and outside, recommendations, for the piers. And, recommending that we do the outside option, that would allow us to dig down, check out the foundation on the outside, see what's not, if there's anything else that. Maybe coming down the pipe for kind of issues that's causing the issue.
You know, when you. Excuse me, state recently identified. Approximately how long ago are we talking?
So we noticed the crack in the building, about. It's been a couple months only. And, we had looked at it, we're just kind of watching it, we didn't really see anything super obvious, and it's. Fairly quickly expanded to the point that, and I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at it or not, but you can see it pretty good outside of Chief's office and. His window is actually separated from the building now and beads and things are going right through. But that corner over a couple month period has settled an inch, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking about foundations, it's pretty substantial. So I reached out to a couple different companies, which I included in the agenda. The one company responded, most of them, the big thing that I ran into is they don't do commercial buildings. I thought they were primarily residential. One other company did, which they're Michigan Foundation, but when you call, they operate under a different name, so it's the BBC. They did say that they did commercial buildings, but didn't have anybody available to do the hunting. And I followed up multiple times and they never returned my call or emails. So that's why I have the one quote, but I didn't want to delay and it get worse because I was concerned that the cost would increase. And when we noticed that it was getting substantially worse quicker, and really started looking at the window separation, we went to the basement and there's 2 cracks in the foundation in that back corner. So this proposal would be 7 piers that extend out past those cracks, which is, we believe, and the first, the Backy level that came and looked at this, or Lido Foundation as a company, feels is causing a lot of that issue. And then you do have our roof, stormwater and things with the flat roof that feeds into that corner, which may not also be helping. So after this, we are going to have to do some cosmetic and go through and make sure that we're preventing this, or any further issues. I've not got quotes or costs for that because I don't want to get a cost and then it potentially change if we have any changes to the condition before they get the foundation secure.
And which option are you requesting? The interior or the exterior?
I put the highest cost in the motion because I didn't know which route you guys would go. Staff will work with either. I would recommend the exterior, which is the 23-101-96. And the reason I say I would recommend the exterior is because that would give us the ability to look outside to see if there's any other areas of concern. And because we do have that storm pipe that feeds into the storm drain there, it would they're already gonna have it tore up, so we can get eyes on that and make sure that there's not any cracks or anything in that pipe that needs to be replaced while it's open. Because that pipe does feed under the sidewalk and then runs over to the storm drain that sits in the police garage, their exit there, the garage area. And potentially could be impacting the foundation. So that's why I would recommend the exterior, but I think either option, based on my discussion with the contractor, would work just as well.
Motion to approve the proposal from Toledo Foundation Repair at the level for Village Hall Foundation repairs in an amount not to exceed $24,707.40, plus the cost of stamp engineer drawings and requirements, with funding to be allocated from the village's fund reserve, and authorize the village administrator to execute the agreements on behalf of the governing body. Or
Bill, second, Tim, to approve the proposal from Toledo Foundation Repair at the level for Village Hall Foundation repairs, the amount not to exceed $24,707.40, plus cost of stamped engineer drawings and required permits with funding to be allocated from the village's fund reserves. Authorized village administrator to execute the agreements on behalf of the governing body. Questions? We're still looking at the lower cost, correct, the 23-101, that's okay. This will allow us again to see that, floor issues on the outside. We take the sidewalk out, we dig down a little bit, we'll check on the spalling, the stuff over the plaster and the concrete there. I agree, I think it's the better option to go about it.
yeah, interior just does not make sense to me at all. They would even quote that. Just not just being able to see the foundation, but what that would do to disrupt normal activity. They're working inside the building as opposed to outside.
That doesn't really mitigate the issue, which is causing it outside.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, all right.
Would you want a budget amendment like Shirley for that? Again, much like people are saying, obviously this comes from general fund, so it doesn't affect our water rates, doesn't affect sewer, and anything like that. We should probably just go and do a budget amendment.
Yes.
Sooner rather than later.
Yes, I do. The reason I did not include the budget amendment on this agenda is because I was hoping to get this repaired and then get the cost for the outside the cosmetic repairs and do one budget amendment for the entire project. But that's why I wanted to specifically identify the fund reserves, and we just talked about, I said that future or that previous savings potentially affects that, because that could potentially go back into fund reserve.
Technically not a reserve, it's almost a transfer.
Right.
Project.
But I will prepare a budget amendment. Again, my hope was to have that whole project cost so that it was very clear the amendment was specifically for this building and those repairs.
Further discussion. Guess you can't be sprayed till then.
Getting cold out, I think we're already.
Lisa, call roll.
Gwen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, motion carries. Moving on, potential purchase of a dump truck for the DPW.
I did print off specifications, that are not in the agenda. They should look like this with a truck on the front. In case any of you wanna look at that, but I talked to Brett before the meeting and he said that. The new truck would be, like a replica, obviously newer of what we have currently. I think he said air compressors in a different spot, but otherwise it's literally the same truck, just newer. But we are asking council to approve a 2-year lease purchase on this. So we would have 2 payments, our initial payment of 95,471.25, and then a second payment of 94,410. Which would be, if you guys approve this, we're committing to that payment next year. In next year's budget, we did budget $150,000 for this, so what? Obviously, the 150 is a little bit more than the 94. We would keep that, carry it forward, and then add the additional funding next year if this is approved tonight. But if you guys have questions, let me know, and it will take some time to get this, so the truck itself will be a few weeks out, and then that'll be just the chassis, and then they'll have to build all of the. Yes,
2-year finance, not lease, correct, on purchasing. Right,
well, it's like a municipal lease finance option is. What they're proposing, and a lot of communities do this. We could also ask for different terms. We specifically tried to look at. Terms that would kind of fit within our budget and not go too far out, because we also we're going to need a police vehicle, and this is all out of the motor vehicle fund. So we didn't want to spread those out too much and impact negatively other purchases and needs. But wanted to spread it out enough that we would be able to get the truck ordered this year and start working on it. We probably may not even have the truck until next year on that second payment is due.
So we have 2 dump trucks now, or we're gonna sell the first one?
We would surplus and sell the first one. But we will not do that because we have to have that for operations until we get the new one.
What am I missing, Danielle? If we've got we had the budgets of the 150,000, yet we've got the vehicle itself, the 95 and the 94 is 180,000, what am I missing here?
We're short in funding. I put the
Then I-
40, not, yeah, whatever it was,
And that's gonna be in the,
49, 125,
and that's gonna be made up in,
26, 27 budget. So that's what I was telling you, if you guys approve this today, we are committed to adding that additional $50,000 into next year's budget for this purchase, for this equipment.
because you put the 150,000 away.
Right, but we're short that.
Short that, but we're, on the same page now, okay,
Okay, so silly question for me.
yes.
Why would we not just spend the 150,000 for the truck since we've already budgeted and then finance the 40,000 balance?
So I actually had asked the International to prepare a finance agreement with that, but they have set terms and that I don't know, that was not an option. So you really, most municipalities don't do as short of a term as us, so it's already like the lowest term we can get. Is my understanding, so most communities do like 5 or 6 year lease payments. But he did say we can prepay without penalty, so the terms are this, but we could say we're just gonna pay you 150 and then have the remaining balance, but the actual terms that we would sign are the 2 payments.
Well, it's good.
There's no penalty for early paying.
I'm thinking, how do we eliminate the potential for interest? Of, nearly $5,500, or if we could drop it to 40.
And the interest won't accrue until the truck is delivered.
Okay.
So we are
If we
actually,
pay it before delivery, we don't pay any.
so we actually are anticipating that we're gonna secure the truck and get it ordered, and then make our second payment at the time of delivery. We're
Okay.
being creative.
Well,
a
speaking
little
of
bit.
being creative, I know you guys all want to get out bigger, I do too, but, you know, again. Let's be creative, let's look at a police vehicle this year, if we have that extra 40, 50 sitting there, and then maybe we find, or you know, that we just expend everything else and pay for it, no. We're putting a bunch of maintenance into your vehicles now.
We are putting more maintenance into it, but considering what a new police car costs. I would submit, and I'm doing this, cutting my own throat. Let's just stay with the fleet we got. My newest car is gonna be, it's the truck, it's gonna be 4 years old. But, we're doing pretty good on mileage. Yeah, our maintenance costs go up, as cars get older, but I still think that's cheaper than buying a new police car and outfitting it. Because I expect that's gonna be between $70,000 and $80,000.
Actually, you're not outfitting them. Outside for you, grand. What's it do?
And we were a little bit strategic, not a little bit, we were a lot strategic, and Chief Brent and I, because the motor vehicle fund is not. Healthy.
This makes it a little more healthy for the year, I guess, but I know that's, you know, kind of thought if interest was accruing or something like that, it'd be a different story, but again.
And maintenance costs aren't, the fleet, but it's still cheaper this year than if I were to ask you to buy it.
This is not an atypical way of purchasing.
Right.
Municipal vehicle. Because so many municipal vehicles, it takes so long to get them, then you get them, you gotta build them out, and by the time you get there, you paid it. And so whatever interest you may pay is so minimal that it makes sense.
And it does help build our motor vehicle, which is struggling, I get that, but again, it's much like if we can afford to try to. We can be creative, let's get what we need to, all we can.
Come this time next year, we definitely be looking to ask for that. Right now, like we looked at this intensely and we can make it another 12 months. What I got.
Going back to the truck itself, so a stainless steel flat box, much like the gas, is that what we're thinking?
You know, I did, Mike, I got these for you and I did not fully go through all of them. I know Brent worked with them. So this is through my deal, the pricing, and went through all the specifications.
But it does include the box.
But he said what we have now is the new truck would be exactly the same. Layout and setup is what we have currently.
And I know it's nitpicky, but again, I think, you know, we request stuff like this much details and possibly again in these large scale purchase, you know, I think the rest of council and government would like to see, again, the totalness of what we purchased. Appreciate it though, thanks for getting.
Yeah.
I do appreciate it.
This does include the upfitting for the box and any plow attachments
Yes,
or any other attachments that we have.
yeah, that is the price with all the upfitting delivered, ready to use operational truck.
Yeah, cause we had to pay some sort of, inverter, remember, and things like that in the last one we purchased, so again, the lighting, all that kind of stuff that nothing, surprise down the line, to say, oh, we have planned this, right, this is gonna get us an outfitted truck.
Correct.
This will surplus the oldest truck complete, not the most recent purchase.
Brown's 99 or something.
Correct.
Correct. I don't know the year off the top of my
Is
head.
that
I know
one-
Brent and I have talked about it, but
The other one was purchased about 3 years ago, I believe.
yeah, we have always sold this out new stays. And that's with any of our equipment, we would operate like that.
I move to approve the purchase of a dump truck from Tri-County International Trucks in the total amount of $189,881.25. And to authorize a 2-year payment plan with payments of $95,471.25 in fiscal year 25 and $94,410 in fiscal year 2026.
Support.
Motion to approve the purchase of a dump truck from Tri-County International Trucks, the total amount $189,881.25. And to authorize a 2-year payment plan with payments of $95,471.25 fiscal year 2025 in $94,410 fiscal year 2026. Further discussion? None, please call roll.
Eric,
Yes.
Gwen,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes, motion carries. Moving on. Other dedicated item, pool finish project. Danielle, couple quotes. Or are we?
Yeah, yes, I did get 6 quotes from 2 companies. I was gonna bring you guys samples. Do you want, they're sitting on my desk. Do you want me to go grab them? If that's true. If you do, let me know. I did reach out to a couple other companies, but they do not. It's very hard to find a company that does outdoor pools, commercial pools with the type of finish that we have and not like an inserted liner. I'm gonna be really honest with you guys, I'm struggling on my recommendation on this one. It's been very challenging, so I've provided all of the information that I have. I certainly am open to questions and dialogue about this. The prices range pretty substantially, so Mid-America Pool Renovation is recommending 3 different options. Plaster option at $174,950 with a 5-year limited warranty. A Diamond Bright aggregate finish, which is when we talk about B&B's option, it's gonna be similar to their pebble finish for $204,150 with a 5-year limited warranty. And then an Interglass project for $200,080 with a 25-year limited warranty. I don't have first-hand experience with that product, but I did review the information that they sent. I tried to reach, I called 3 people who have this system in their pools in Michigan that Mid-America installed, and the 3 of them, I never heard back from any of them, because I was hoping to touch base with them and get some experience or how they feel it's holding up. With the material, but it looks to be potentially a good product, but I don't know enough about it to comfortably tell you guys, and what I don't want is give you a false hope that it's gonna last for 30 years and then 10 years down the road or 15, you're saying, Danielle, you said it was good for 30. I just don't know. The information I have, again, it looks good, it sounds like a good product. The other B&B pools also provided 3 different options. And theirs range. It'd just be easier to look at my agenda probably than scroll through all this. So Marsite finish, which is our current finish that we have on there, is $141,500. I would not recommend doing that because we know there's been a lot of issues with that. The next one is the quartz finish for $171,500, and then the pebble finish for $249,000. I asked both companies what the life of these finishes are, and they said there's so many unknown variables that they will not and cannot tell us exactly what it will be. Because they have to consider we're an outdoor pool, so what was the weather that year? We run the heater, did we use more chemicals than normal? How was it open later into the year? Did we close it early? How much plastic did we have to use to wash it and get it prepped for the opening year? So there's just a lot of things that affect the life.
They basically wash their hands of any responsibility whatsoever.
They said.
They said it depends, yes. And I don't think I mentioned this, but B&B, all 3 of their options would include a 1-year warranty. So I put this on the agenda. I'm really torn. I don't know the best option. I think we need to obviously factor in costs, and we need to look at the life of the product. I put in the motion to go with the quartz finish of $171,500 because I think that I know that we've had positive experience with B&B pools, and we know that they do a good job and they've worked well for us in the past with other projects. And that's kind of the mid-range pricing, but if you want me to tell you how long that's gonna last, I don't know. And it sounds like B&B Pools does not know. Questions, I will take them, I will try to answer them the best that I can. Yeah, so they were not communities, they actually, two of them were hotels. One of them was an indoor and one was an outdoor pool at the hotel. And then the other one was a, like a community center, rec center, but it wasn't a municipality owned facility. Some kind of recreation facility, like private, but none of them called back.
The reason I asked is that maybe a good idea to put this on hold until those. Until somebody reply back to you.
I was. In line, is this, what's our time period?
So I would like to, whatever finish we go with, I would like to get it on the schedule for early spring so that we can hopefully open and keep a similar schedule to what we've had in the past.
It's
So
got to
obviously,
up, it's got to cure.
correct. So we would do, this would be in the spring. We cannot do this project in the winter, so all of these finishes, they would drain the pool. We do have to run pumps because of the groundwater in that area so that the pool doesn't literally pop out of the ground. They would go through, they would remove what's in there currently, apply the new finish, and then we would immediately have to fill the pool with these finishes to have that pressure on it and let it cure underwater. And then hopefully we would then be able to go into opening.
I would have thought it would be talking by that, just.
I can, they provided me, and that should be in your agenda packet as well, a list of much more companies. I specifically tried to reach out to Michigan-based.
Right.
Pools, and I tried to specifically, if they had the Interglass application.
Right.
And I was hoping to find outdoor pools, because I was trying to find the most like
Yeah.
us. To be, because I don't wanna call somebody that has a completely different environment. But I can call others as well.
See, we currently have the Mars site.
Correct.
And that was cut back from what originally, do we know what the original?
Yeah,
spec
so initially we were going to do the pebble finish.
Well, we certainly don't want to do marcite again then in the last, and we use a ton of muriatic acid and everything else to try to keep that thing within the parameters, right? So, thank goodness for the library bond. This is literally, again, investing back in the community, the difference in that bond. So, right about 250,000 this year. Hopefully next year we can discuss other alternatives that additional funding. I would rather, again, I don't like the 5-year warranty as compared to a 25. I would much rather, let's get some feedback from both. Both companies and their.
I have talked to both companies pretty extensively, so I think it's just if we can get in.
The references.
The references,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, I'm for that, getting some references. No, it's not easy to do.
Yeah, how I feel about this, I'm pretty vocal about it, but I would like to, let's say, if it's gonna last us 25 years over 5. Or, I think it's well worth it. It's okay with that, okay, yeah. So, no action, we'll just move on, Danielle, that cool, we don't need to table or anything, just get more information. Moving on, reports, water treatment plant, we got Nora here, any questions, comments, Nora, you got anything for us?
No.
I do last week, we met with Bragg, obviously, so again, let's really, cut to the chase and get, the discussions going, so. What's the deal with opening that valve? Is it Bragg for some reason that's holding us up? Is it Eagle? Again, we need to. Be clear. If Bragg is saying, no, well, I'm sorry, it's time to move forward, put those mixers in, let's get a solution. If it's Eagle, then let's sit down with Eagle and say, what do we got to do?
And it's not my Eagle in here.
They are waiting for a report back from that Great Lakes Authority. I have my intel about that meeting. My legal engineer wants to see the valve open because it is, we're having to flush that Silverhorn line. We flush 170,000 gallons a month from 223 to, so that's not cheap. So we do flush a substantial amount of water through there to get a good chlorine residual. It is not on my legal end and it's not on us.
You know what our biggest concern is about opening that up when we literally put the mixers in for them? They have
So when we initially did this, almost 3 years now. It was, the theory, as you guys heard, was that they would get pressure water because when my pumps are running, it doesn't go to the tower for them. However, their system's also very large, so what amount of water they're getting during that fresh period, we are calculating that, because I did have my sanitary survey last week and again tomorrow with Eagle, and that's something we're gonna calculate. When north pumps are on from here to here, this is how much water we're pushing out, this is how much needed to the tower, and we can figure out that difference and where that water is going. We are working on that, to get some calculations to bring that to that next meeting we have. I don't know if it's their engineer, I don't know if it's on the drain, I don't know if it's right now. But it is not on our side. So
Well, let's get our samples, let's get whoever's decision that is.
we are also going to, normally I sample our disinfectant byproducts at, Perky Pantry. And that's not directly into Riga's line, but that is a dead end in our system. That is an established sampling point that we have with Eagle, so that's why we use that point. During our sanitary survey, we are going to change and sample directly out of the tower, just so we have some data to see what's happening in the tower. So we're also gonna change that up. Next time I sample will be December. So in the December, which we talked about that sticker, it's gonna be lower because we don't have as much organic material being introduced into the river. So you're gonna be at the bottom of that cycle. However, we can at least get an idea about what, when we do it now, in the clear well underground, we see what we're forming there. Now let's see what we might be forming in the tower and what that looks like, so.
And then we should always be able to go back, but top out's the issue, right? To force feed it from the plane directly. So again, let's at least get numbers and prove ourselves over it.
I'm so confused, Nora, with some of the numbers.
Sure.
Because, meaning, I'm confused with their concern with some of the numbers. That might be a better way to say that. Is it, my take from last week was that the statement was, our, Riga stating, our water quality, they have the belief that it's not as good at the beginning of their line as it should be. But I guess what I'm saying is this, why can't we take the test at the end of our line and the beginning of their line and look at the numbers, and wouldn't they be the same?
Beginning,
It seems, I mean, it seems.
the end of ours to the beginning of it, it's just going through about.
Yeah,
But however, we have no sampling point there. There's nowhere to sample.
there's no,
So what used to happen is it used to come off 223 and we would sample it now. The map was your first spot bid. Now, as it comes down Gibson to Silverhorn, it is able to loop both north and south and go through their system off Cemetery off the back and off 223. So now I still check every Wednesday. You still take samples from that. I do not, when I make sure the water is safe when it gets there. I don't do a full water quality parameter like I do on ours, but I check bacteria, I check chlorine, and I check pH to make sure that what they're getting is safe to drink. I am not checking when you say water quality, there's literally 400 million things I could be checking.
well, what do you think it is that they want? Do you know? I mean, I don't know.
They're concerned with their water age because their infrastructure is so large. So what happens is they have to flush to bring up,
Right.
she said they would check water quality as their hydrants. The only thing you're gonna check there is your chlorine residual. You can do that in the field. You can check pH and other things, but what they're looking for is their chlorine residual. They wanna make sure they have enough chlorine in their system to keep that water safe as it comes out of your faucet. What they're concerned about and what they keep violating is their disinfectant byproducts. And that is a whole thing of your organic material in the water and how much chlorine you have and the time it's set together. So there's two different kinds of disinfectant byproducts. One that's formed right away and goes away. One that the longer it sits together, and that's the one they have because their water age is so old because they have. Okay, the size of the. They have so much water sitting in there, it's like a storage tank, it's just underground. They have that much water sitting there that they don't use, so they're flushing, if you look at their flushing numbers compared to ours. Yeah. So I said, since we turned that valve about 3 years ago, we flush 120,000 gallons a month, so that's 1.2 million a year that we're flushing from 223 to you. And you look at their numbers for their distribution. It's compared to that 1.2. So.
Can you test at the first hydrant each way, or can we tap?
They could test it on hydrant, they could do a tap, like we have a tap over on Westbrook, they could tap, we put a sample tap in. Where they could do it right there and sample, cause when you did bring that up, nobody's ever checked. They do test their disinfectant byproducts at NAP, but like I said, that's not the first point anymore, and they test right.
No, I think we all wanna know, here's ours ends, here's theirs starts, whether it's an inch or 1 foot. You would still think it'd be 120, making up numbers, and 120. And if we can show it's 120, it's 120. There's no issues. Or if ours is 120 and theirs is 590, then you know where the issue is. I just think I wanna solve that problem. I wanna solve that discrepancy before like February. So we meet them in February-ish, so we can say, no, it's very clear. Bam, bam, none of this, well, you're doing and you're not doing baloney things.
So
How do we do that?
Am I remembering correctly? Let me interrupt for a second. You said that they have 15 days of water.
it is roughly in the
2
category.
weeks, so
It's
basically
calculated, yes.
they have 2 weeks of water sitting in their system.
Well, then it's not.
Yeah, so if we shut their valve off to them and stop serving water, they could have enough water for their community for 15 days, just sitting in their main.
Then how can the blame be on us?
That's the $1 million.
That's why I'm saying it out loud.
Well, that's the numbers won't lie.
I know, that's why I'm saying, the numbers, the data will. Now. I just said it out loud. I know the answer. I just said it out loud.
Well, let's get those numbers
Okay.
before we'll.
I will keep it in.
Because it seems like we had that discussion about 3 years ago when we were over there and we said the lines, your line size is the issue. And if we do simply say, here it is again, or proof.
And they bring in the Great Lake, water authority people, I think will come out in the report that they give them, because they're supposed to help them try to figure this out. And I feel like that will come out in that report, and really having infrastructure that large, the only way, just like if you're not home for a week on vacation, you flush your lines, get rid of that old water. That's just kind of how you freshen up your line. It's not my fault, it's not your fault, nobody's fault, but it's still here.
It is what it is.
It is, yeah.
Thanks, Nora.
Yeah.
Laura, do you know if their water lines are all that large diameter line all the way through? Is there any reduction in their?
There is reduction, so they're dead end streets. I believe, don't hold me to all the numbers, but they do go down to maybe 8. But they're
7 dead ends.
there's 7 dead ends, we have 13. In the unit, our size, we have 13, they have 7. So
And when it's a dead end, it kind of, there's nowhere for it to have that.
it just sits there, so that old water
Yeah,
just sits there, and if you're not flushing that hydrant. Or water likes to seek its own level, so let's say the dead end's here and I'm the third house down here, but. I decide to fill my pool, then you're gonna get that flow back, but otherwise, if there's not a big draw anywhere, right, that water is sitting there until you flush it out. So
Wastewater plant. Questions, comments? Discussion. Anyone? Tim? Nope, Eric?
I do, Steve in his report mentioned there was a replaced 4 2-inch conduits going towards clarifiers. That were destroyed by our contractor during the project, is that when they? Redid, when they, when he did the project that just finished up a couple of years ago?
That is the project with LaSalle with the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, yes. And that is being included in our counterclaims, among other things back to them. We put our attorneys on notice for that immediately, and you were just waiting for a final cost on that.
We have a final cost on that?
We're gathering it. We got the last invoices, so we should have it shortly, and I will be sharing that with you guys.
Thank you.
Right?
No, there's nothing.
Bill? Okay. Nope. All right, second chance, public comment. Anybody hearing any of it? Going on, all right, committee of the whole next week. All right, 2 weeks, sorry, everybody here, 2 weeks. Yeah. Whatever it is. All right, you know. Everybody over here. All right, there's nothing further, entertain, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 9:06 p.m.
I'll start work.
All right, well, Phil, second Eric to adjourn 9:06 p.m. Let's call roll.
Gwen,
yes.
Tim,
Yeah.
Ken,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes. Carries. Or adjourned, that's it, right?